If you were kidnapped by the most feared Mafia hair in Blackridge, would you try to escape? Or would you make him regret taking you? And before this story begins, tell me in the comments, what would you do if the person holding you captive slowly became the only person keeping you alive? Rain hammered against the windows of the Valemont Grand Hotel like bullets against glass. The kind of rain that turned the streets of Blackridge silver and blurred the city into a nightmare of neon reflections and shadowy headlights. Inside the ballroom, nobody cared about the storm. The rich never did. Crystal chandeliers glittered above hundreds of wealthy guests dressed in black tuxedos and shimmering gowns. Politicians laughed beside judges. Billionaires clinked champagne glasses with celebrities while violin music floated through the air. Every smile in the room was fake. Every handshake hid a knife. And standing at the center of it all was Elena Vale. She hated every second of it. This dress is a crime against humanity, she muttered under her breath. The woman beside her nearly choked on her champagne. You look stunning. I look kidnapped by fabric. You always complain when you look good. Elena adjusted the tight black dress with visible irritation. The gown hugged every curve of her body, elegant enough for the wealthy vultures surrounding her, but uncomfortable enough to qualify as torture. Her dark hair fell over one shoulder in loose waves. Diamond earrings reflected the ballroom lights. She looked like she belonged here. That was the problem. People trusted appearances too easily. A waiter passed carrying champagne flutes. Elena grabbed one immediately. Third one tonight, her friend asked. Fourth, you're driving. Then pray for us. Her friend laughed, but Elena's eyes drifted toward the massive ballroom entrance. The security guards there looked nervous. Not normal nervous. The dangerous kind. Her smile faded slightly. Something felt wrong. Years of surviving had taught her to trust that feeling. Across the ballroom, hidden behind a private balcony overlooking the event, Luca DeSantis watched the crowd below with the patience of a predator. The city called him many things. The Prince of Blackridge. The Devil's Son. The future head of the DeSantis crime family. None of those names bothered him. Fear was useful. Fear kept people obedient. At 32 years old, Luca had already built a reputation more violent than his father's. Rival gangs disappeared overnight when they crossed him. Informants ended up floating in the harbor. Entire criminal operations collapsed because Luca decided he was bored. And tonight, he had one objective. Kidnap Victoria Hale, daughter of federal prosecutor Victor Hale. The same prosecutor currently building a case capable of destroying the DeSantis empire forever. Luca leaned against the balcony railing while his right-hand man approached. We confirmed the target arrived 20 minutes ago. Matteo said quietly. You're sure? Blonde dress. East Wing. Private security detail. Luca's expression remained cold. Any police? None visible. Visible means nothing. Matteo nodded carefully. Luca looked down at the ballroom again. Hundreds of people. Too many witnesses. Too many variables. But fear worked best when it struck publicly. Victor Hale had spent months humiliating the DeSantis family in courtrooms and news interviews. Raiding businesses. Freezing accounts. Arresting soldiers. Now Luca would return the favor by taking his daughter. Simple, clean, efficient. At least that was the plan. Downstairs, Elena moved through the ballroom toward the restroom hallway while checking her phone. No message. Messages. Good. The fewer people who knew where she was tonight, the better. A man brushed past her shoulder suddenly. Hard. Too hard. She frowned and turned, then froze. The man whispered without looking at her. Leave. Right now. Her pulse spiked instantly. Before she could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. Every survival instinct inside her screamed. Run. Now. Elena immediately changed direction toward the nearest exit corridor. Fast. Controlled. Don't panic. People notice panic. The hallway ahead was quieter, darker, isolated from the ballroom music. Bad. Very bad. She reached for the concealed pepper spray hidden inside her purse. A gloved hand suddenly clamped over her mouth. Another arm wrapped around her waist. Elena reacted instantly. She slammed her backward into someone's knee. A curse exploded behind her. She bit hard into the hand covering her mouth. Son of a... Another man grabbed her wrists. Elena. No. Not Elena. Never use your real. A cloth covered her mouth. Chemical smell. Chloroform. Her vision blurred immediately. She fought violently anyway. Her nails clawed someone's face. A man grunted in pain. Jesus Christ, she fights like a damn animal. Darkness swallowed her whole. The last thing Elena heard before unconsciousness took her was one sentence. We've got Hale's daughter. The SUV sped through rain-covered streets at terrifying speed. Inside the vehicle, 4 armed men sat in tense silence, and directly in front of them sat Luca DeSantis himself. Cold. Calm. Immaculately dressed in a black suit untouched by chaos. The unconscious woman beside him slowly stirred. Luca glanced toward her. She waking up? Looks like it. Good. He preferred conversations face to face. Elena groaned softly before her eyes fluttered open. Blurred lights. Leather seats. Gunmetal reflections. Men. Weapons. Oh, fantastic. Kidnapped again. Her mind sharpened instantly despite the lingering chemicals in her system. Stay calm. Observe. Count exits. Count weapons. Driver. Passenger. 2 beside her. 1 directly across. And then her eyes locked on to Luca. The room temperature inside the SUV suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. Even drugged and disoriented, Elena recognized danger when she saw it. He wasn't merely attractive. Men like him weaponized attractiveness. Dark tailored suit. Sharp jawline. Controlled posture. Eyes completely devoid of mercy. The kind of man who looked more dangerous calm than angry. Luca studied her carefully. Something about her felt wrong already. Too observant. Too aware. Most kidnapped women cried first. This one calculated exits. Interesting. Elena finally spoke. You people are either very stupid or very dead. One of the guards blinked. What? You kidnapped the wrong woman? Luca leaned back slightly. Did we? Yes. Victoria Hale? Nope. You expect me to believe that? I honestly don't care what you believe. Matteo frowned. Boss. Maybe? Luca silenced him with a glance. Then his attention returned to Elena. You're telling me you're not Victor Hale's daughter. I'm telling you your intelligence network deserves refunds. Despite the situation, Matteo almost laughed. Luca did not. You were at the gala. So were 300 other people. You were under Hale's security protection. No, I was under expensive champagne protection. You're lying. Elena rolled her eyes. Oh, definitely. Because lying while tied up in a kidnapping SUV sounds like an excellent long-term strategy. One of the men muttered quietly. She's got a mouth on her. Elena turned toward him instantly. And you look like you moisturize with motor oil. The vehicle went silent. Matteo coughed to hide a laugh. Even Luca's expression shifted slightly. Barely. But enough. Elena noticed. Interesting. The feared Luca DeSantis wasn't entirely made of ice after all. Then Luca pulled out his phone. Search her. Her purse. A guard grabbed Elena's bag while she glared murderously. Touch anything in there and I hope your family enjoys hospital bills. The guard ignored her and emptied the purse. Wallet. Phone. Lipstick, keys. Fake identification. Luca picked up the ID slowly. Elena Vale, not Victoria Hale. Luca's eyes narrowed. Matteo swore quietly. She wasn't the target. The SUV became tense instantly. Because mistakes like this got people killed. Luca looked back toward Elena. You expect me to believe this ID is real? No. But I expect you to realize kidnapping random women from charity galas is embarrassing. Who are you? A very annoyed citizen. Why were you near Hale's table? I was escaping a boring conversation about wine. Who invited you? A man named Mind Your Business. Matteo sighed. She's impossible. Elena corrected. I'm kidnapped. Luca studied her longer this time. Too calm. Too intelligent. Too trained. Something beneath the sarcasm felt dangerous. Then Elena's expression changed suddenly. Tiny shift, but Luca caught it. She looked out the rear window, and fear finally appeared in her eyes. Real fear. Not fear of him. Fear of something behind them. Luca turned instantly. Headlights. 3 black SUVs accelerating fast through the rain. Matteo cursed. Those aren't ours. Gunfire exploded across the street. The rear windshield shattered instantly. Everyone ducked. The driver swerved violently. Anna! One attacker shouted from another vehicle. Get her alive! The blood drained from Matteo's face. Thereafter HER. More bullets tore into the SUV. Luca grabbed Elena instinctively as glass exploded across the seats. She stared at him in shock. Not because he protected her. Because now he understood. She wasn't random. Not even close. The convoy slammed through a red light while pursuing vehicles opened fire relentlessly behind them. Elena's breathing became uneven. No. No. They found her. After all these years, they found her again. Luca held a pistol calmly while staring directly at her. Who are they? Elena stayed silent. Another barrage of bullets hit the SUV. The driver shouted. Tires are hit. Luca grabbed Elena's chin roughly, forcing eye contact. Who are they? For the first time since waking up, Elena looked genuinely shaken. Then she whispered the words that changed everything. You don't understand. A vehicle behind them rammed the SUV violently. The car spun sideways across rain-soaked asphalt. Screaming tires, gunfire, chaos. Elena looked directly into Luca's eyes. They were trying to kill me before you kidnapped me. And suddenly Luca DeSantis realized the woman sitting beside him might be far more dangerous than the prosecutor's daughter he intended to steal. The SUV crashed through a flooded intersection while bullets ripped across the doors like metal rain. Elena gripped the leather seat hard enough to hurt her fingers. Not again. Not again. The memory hit her like ice water. Dark rooms, chains, men laughing, running barefoot through freezing rain years ago while blood dripped down her legs. No. Focus. Survive first. Break later. Luca DeSantis remained unnervingly calm despite the chaos around him. One hand held the overhead grip while the other aimed his pistol through the shattered rear window. A black SUV gained on them fast. Luca fired twice. Precise. Controlled. The pursuing driver lost control instantly. Tires screamed across wet asphalt before the vehicle smashed sideways into a street divider. Flames erupted behind them. Matteo exhaled sharply. One down. Not enough. Luca replied coldly. Another vehicle appeared from the side street. Gunfire exploded again. The windshield cracked. Their driver shouted a curse. We're boxed in. Luca's expression darkened. He turned toward Elena. This keeps happening around you. She stared at him. You say that like I planned tonight. People don't launch military-grade ambushes for random women. Congratulations. You've discovered the problem. The SUV swerved violently into an underground parking entrance beneath an abandoned office building. Concrete pillars flashed past them. The vehicle screeched to a stop. Move. Luca ordered. Everyone exited instantly. Matteo and the others spread into defensive positions while Luca grabbed Elena's wrist. She yanked free immediately. I can walk myself. I wasn't helping you. Good. I hate teamwork. Gunfire echoed from the parking entrance above. The attackers were coming. Fast. Luca pulled Elena behind a concrete pillar as bullets sparked against the walls nearby. She flinched instinctively. Luca noticed. Interesting. She reacted to gunfire like someone familiar with it. Not civilians. Survivors. Very different people. One attacker rushed down the ramp. Luca shot him before his foot touched the lower level. No hesitation, no emotion, just death. Elena watched the body collapse. You kill people very casually. You criticize kidnappers very casually. Fair. Another burst of gunfire forced them lower into the structure. Matteo approached quickly. Boss, more incoming. We need extraction now. Luca glanced toward Elena again. Every instinct told him to leave her. She was a complication. An unknown variable. Potential bait. But someone powerful wanted her alive badly enough to launch a direct attack against DeSantis soldiers. That made her valuable. And dangerous. Luca finally spoke. She comes with us. Elena frowned. That wasn't the sentence I was hoping for. You're safer with me. She actually laughed. The sound caught Luca off guard. Not because it was mocking. Because it sounded genuine. You kidnapped me 30 minutes ago, Elena said. Your definition of safe is concerning. Matteo opened a secured steel door leading deeper underground. Vehicles ready. Luca motioned forward. Move. Elena stared at the dark tunnel ahead. Tell me this leads somewhere less murdery. No promises. Fantastic. Few 30 minutes later, the city skyline stretched below massive floor to ceiling windows nearly 80 stories above Blackridge. Rain streaked across the glass while distant thunder rolled between skyscrapers. Elena stood silently inside Luca DeSantis's penthouse. If luxury and danger had a child, this place would be it. Dark marble floors, black steel architecture, expensive whiskey, minimal furniture, no warmth whatsoever. The entire penthouse felt like its owner, cold, controlled, untouchable. Elena slowly turned in a circle. You know, she said, for a billionaire criminal, this place is surprisingly depressing. Matteo nearly smiled while removing his blood-stained jacket. Luca loosened his tie slightly. You're still alive. Try gratitude. I'll consider it after the kidnapping refund. One of the guards snorted. Luca shot him a look. Silence returned immediately. Elena noticed that too. Every person here feared him. Not respected, feared. Important difference. Luca walked toward the built-in bar and poured whiskey into a crystal glass. You're staying here until I figure out who wants you. Elena crossed her arms. I'd rather die. You nearly did. I'm adaptable. Luca handed her a glass. She looked at it suspiciously. What's in it? Whiskey. You sure? If I wanted to poison you, you'd already be dead. Comforting. Still, she accepted it. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange. Tiny moment. Almost nothing. Yet Luca noticed her pulse jump slightly. Interesting. Elena immediately drank half the glass. Definitely not a social drinker. That was stress drinking. Also interesting. Luca sat across from her near the massive windows overlooking Blackridge. You have 30 seconds to explain why armed men are hunting you. Elena leaned against the marble counter. Or what? Or I start making assumptions. You already kidnapped the wrong woman based on assumptions. How'd that work out? Matteo coughed into his fist again. Luca ignored him. You're educated, Luca said quietly. Elena raised an eyebrow. Shocking. You scan exits automatically. You spotted weapons immediately. You didn't panic under gunfire. Some women have hobbies. You also lied about your reaction. That made her pause. Barely. But enough. When the attack started, Luca continued. You weren't surprised they came. Silence. Rain hammered against the glass harder now. The city below looked drowned in darkness. Elena slowly set down the whiskey glass. I don't owe you answers. You owe me honesty after people tried turning my convoy into Swiss cheese. You owe me compensation for emotional damages. Luca stared at her for several long seconds. Most people cracked beneath that stare. Elena did not. Instead, She walked directly toward the enormous windows. The city lights reflected across her face, while thunder illuminated the skyline behind her. For a moment, Luca forgot she was technically his hostage. Then she spoke quietly. "You ever get tired of pretending you're not exhausted?" The question caught him completely off guard. Luca narrowed his eyes. "What? You carry yourself like someone constantly waiting for betrayal." Matteo shifted uncomfortably. Elena continued. "It's in the shoulders. The posture. The way your guards keep watching you instead of the room." Luca stood slowly. "You think you understand me?" "No." Elena turned toward him. "I think you understand violence so well you forgot how normal people live." Something dangerous flashed through Luca's eyes. The room temperature seemed to drop instantly. Matteo wisely backed away toward the hallway. "You talk too much," Luca said, "and you threaten people instead of communicating. We all have flaws." He stepped closer. Close enough now that Elena caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with gunpowder and rain. Close enough to notice the faint scar near his jawline. Close enough to realize he was even more dangerous up close. Every instinct told her to back away. She didn't. Luca's voice lowered. "You should be afraid of me." Elena tilted her head slightly. "You keep saying that like it's your favorite personality trait." For the first time in years, Luca nearly smiled during an interrogation. That annoyed him immensely. Suddenly, Matteo's phone rang sharply from across the room. He answered immediately. Then his expression changed. "Boss." Luca looked over. "What?" "We ran her identity." Elena went completely still. Matteo continued carefully. "Nothing came back." Luca frowned. "What do you mean nothing?" "No school records, no employment history, no birth certificate beyond 6 years ago." Silence filled the penthouse. Luca slowly turned back toward Elena. Her face remained calm. Too calm. "People exist," Luca said quietly. "Paper trails exist. Taxes exist." Elena shrugged lightly. "Maybe I'm a ghost." "You erased yourself." "No." A shadow crossed her expression. "Someone else did." That changed everything. Because disappearing completely in modern America required power. Government-level power. Organized crime power. Or both. Luca approached again slowly. "Who protected you?" "No one." "Who are you hiding from?" "Everyone." Matteo muttered quietly. "This is getting very bad." The Elena gave him a tired look. "You think?" Before Luca could continue, every light in the penthouse suddenly died. Darkness swallowed the room instantly. Complete, absolute. Then came silence. The kind of silence that made trained men reach for weapons. Luca's gun appeared in his hand immediately. Matteo pulled another. "Backup generator should have kicked in," Matteo whispered. "It didn't," Luca replied coldly. Elena's pulse quickened. No, they found her already. Impossible. Too fast. A faint metallic sound echoed somewhere near the ceiling. Luca heard it instantly. So did Elena. Sniper positioning. Her eyes widened. "Oh." She tackled Luca sideways just as the massive window exploded inward. A suppressed rifle shot cracked through the darkness. The bullet shattered the marble wall exactly where Luca's head had been 1 second earlier. Glass rained across the penthouse. Matteo opened fire toward the adjacent rooftop instantly. More gunshots answered. The penthouse erupted into chaos. Luca grabbed Elena hard against the floor behind the overturned couch. "You saw him." Reflection in the glass. She breathed. Another shot tore through the room. Luca looked at her differently now. Not civilian. Definitely not civilian. 2 armed men suddenly breached through the hallway entrance using suppressed weapons. Matteo killed the first instantly. The second advanced deeper into the penthouse. Elena saw him first. "Left side!" Luca fired blindly around the couch. The attacker dropped immediately. The silence afterward felt deafening. Only rain, broken glass, heavy breathing, Emergency lights finally activated, dimly red across the penthouse. Luca still held Elena beneath him protectively, both breathing hard, her face inches from his. Too close. Way too close. Elena became suddenly aware of his hand gripping her waist. Luca noticed her heartbeat accelerating. Not fear. Something else. Dangerous. The sniper fire had stopped. Matteo approached cautiously. Perimeter teams clearing the building. Luca nodded once without looking away from Elena. Then he noticed something else. She wasn't shaking from the attack. She was angry. Furious. Like someone exhausted by constantly running. Luca finally stood and pulled her up with him. Broken glass crunched beneath their feet. The city flickered outside through the shattered windows. Luca stepped closer again. This time there was no humor left in his expression. Only cold intensity. Enough games. Elena stayed silent. You recognized sniper positioning. Silence. You identified breach movement before trained soldiers. Nothing. You knew exactly where to move. Her jaw tightened. Luca's voice dropped lower. Who the hell are you really? And for the first time since the kidnapping began, Elena looked genuinely afraid of answering. Rainwater dripped slowly from shattered glass onto the marble floor. The penthouse looked like a battlefield. Bullet holes scarred the walls. Smoke lingered faintly in the air. And standing in the center of the destruction was Elena Vale, breathing carefully while Luca DeSantis stared at her, like she was either the answer to everything or the beginning of a disaster. Who the hell are you really? The question hung between them heavily. Matteo silently ordered guards to secure the perimeter while emergency crews moved through adjacent floors. Nobody interrupted Luca when he looked like this. Everyone in Blackridge understood one thing. Luca DeSantis was most dangerous when calm. Elena crossed her arms tightly. Not defensive, protective, like she was physically holding herself together. I told you already, she said quietly. My name is Elena. That's not what I asked. You think there's some dramatic secret identity reveal coming. You disappeared from every system before 6 years ago. That bothers you. It interests me. Luca stepped closer. Red emergency lights flickered across his face while thunder rolled outside. You knew sniper behavior. So, you recognized military movement. Maybe I watched documentaries. You're either trained or hunted. That landed. Elena's expression changed slightly. Luca noticed immediately. There it is. Fear. Real fear, not fear of him. Fear of memory. Elena looked away toward the broken skyline beyond the shattered windows. Blackridge glowed beneath the storm like a city drowning in its own sins. You ever spend so long running, she asked quietly, that eventually you forget what normal feels like? Luca stayed silent. Every room becomes a threat assessment. She glanced toward the destroyed window. Every loud noise feels dangerous. Another pause. You memorize exits before conversations. Her voice lowered slightly. And eventually, you stop sleeping properly because survival teaches you that sleeping deeply gets people killed. Something about the way she said it felt too practiced. Too real. Luca had heard soldiers speak like that. Victims too. The difference was survivors learned how to weaponize trauma. And Elena clearly had. Matteo approached cautiously. Boss, rooftop sniper escaped. Luca didn't look away from Elena. Any identification. Professional team. Clean weapons. Military modifications. Elena, Luca said softly, you attract expensive enemies. That makes 2 of us. A faint smile almost touched Luca's mouth. Almost. Matteo noticed and immediately looked away. Because that never happened. Not with anyone. Especially not hostages. Luca finally gestured toward the hallway. Come with me. Elena raised an eyebrow. That sentence usually ends badly. For most people, yes. Comforting. She followed anyway. Not because she trusted him. because she understood something important now. Whoever attacked tonight had resources powerful enough to strike inside Luca DeSantis' territory, which meant nowhere in Blackridge was safe anymore. The private office, overlooking the eastern side of the city, felt colder than the rest of the penthouse. Dark shelves, rare whiskey, floor-to-ceiling windows. No personal photographs. No warmth. Elena noticed immediately. You really committed to the emotionally unavailable aesthetic. Luca poured 2 glasses of whiskey. You talk constantly. You brood constantly. I'm balancing the atmosphere. He handed her a glass again. This time their fingers lingered slightly longer than necessary. Both noticed. Neither acknowledged it. Luca sat across from her near the massive desk. For the next few minutes, he said calmly, "Pretend I'm not the man who kidnapped you. That's difficult when you keep dressing like a Bond villain." His eyes narrowed slightly. Elena took a sip of whiskey. Definitely expensive. Definitely wasted on him. Then Luca leaned forward. No sarcasm. Dangerous request. Truth. The room became silent again. Elena stared into the amber liquid inside her glass. Thinking, calculating, deciding how much truth kept her alive. Finally she exhaled slowly. My mother sold me. Luca didn't move. Didn't react. But something inside him sharpened instantly. Elena continued staring at the whiskey instead of him. I was 13. The storm outside seemed quieter suddenly. When people imagine trafficking networks, they picture dirty warehouses and chains. Her mouth twisted bitterly. Real operations wear suits. Luca listened carefully. No one notices rich monsters. She laughed softly. Broken sound. They sponsor charities. Attend galas. Shake hands with politicians. Her eyes darkened. And then they buy children. The room felt colder now. Even Matteo, standing near the doorway, looked disturbed. Elena continued quietly. I spent 3 years moving through private buyers, fake foster systems, underground transport routes. Her hand trembled slightly against the glass. Only slightly. Years of control hid most of it. Then one night, she whispered, I escaped. Luca watched her carefully. Not pity, never pity, but understanding. He recognized survivors, recognized rage hidden beneath calm. You disappeared after that, he said. Yes. Who helped you? Silence again. Then finally, Victor Hale. Luca's expression hardened instantly. The federal prosecutor. Of course. Elena nodded slowly. He found me during an investigation years ago. And instead of turning you over officially, buried me. Why? Because the people connected to that network were powerful enough to reach government systems. Matteo muttered quietly, Jesus. Elena looked toward the city again. Hale gave me a new identity, moved me repeatedly, kept me hidden. Why were you at the gala? Hay invited me. Luca frowned. Why would a federal prosecutor bring a protected witness into public? Because he's arrogant enough to think nobody would attack at a charity event. Luca's jaw tightened. Or maybe Hale used her as bait. The possibility irritated him more than expected. Elena finally looked directly at Luca. You want the funny part? There's a funny part. I spent years hiding from monsters. Her eyes moved slowly over the luxurious penthouse. And somehow I ended up kidnapped by another one. The words should have annoyed him. Instead, they lingered strangely. Because, unlike everyone else, Elena looked at Luca and saw the man beneath the myth. Not the feared hair. Not the legend. The weapon. A dangerous silence stretched between them. Then Elena smirked faintly. You know, for someone terrifying, you're surprisingly decent at listening. Luca leaned back slightly. That's because most people say useless things. And I don't. You say dangerous things. Something about the way he said it made heat rise unexpectedly beneath Elena's skin. Annoying. Very annoying. She stood abruptly and walked toward the windows. The city lights painted silver reflections across her black dress. Luca watched her quietly. Too beautiful. That realization irritated him immediately. Beautiful women complicated judgment. He learned that years ago. Yet Elena wasn't beautiful in the polished socialite way Sofia Moretti was. Sofia looked expensive. Elena looked real. Like fire trying desperately to disguise itself as elegance. That dress is ruined. Elena muttered while examining blood near the hem. You're worried about the dress. Was expensive. I'll buy another. She turned toward him slowly. That's your solution for everything, isn't it? What is? Throw money and violence at problems. Luca almost smiled again. Dangerous woman. Then Matteo's phone buzzed. He answered quickly before his expression darkened. Boss. Luca looked over. What now? Your father knows. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Luca's eyes hardened. How? The attack drew attention. Someone inside the family leaked information. Of course they did. Nothing stayed hidden in Mafia politics, especially mistakes. Matteo hesitated carefully. There's more. Luca waited. Marco wants the woman eliminated. Elena froze. Matteo continued reluctantly. He says she's a liability. Silence swallowed the room. Luca stood slowly. Every guard nearby became visibly tense, because Luca and his father agreeing on something was already rare. Disobeying Luca DeSantis entirely. That bordered on suicidal. Elena studied Luca carefully. This was it. Decision time. Would he hand her over? Shoot her himself? Trade her to save political damage? She had seen powerful men choose self-preservation her entire life. Luca walked toward the window silently. Blackridge stretched beneath him like a kingdom built from violence and fear. His father's kingdom. One day his. Normally he obeyed family interests without hesitation. Emotion weakened leadership. Attachment created vulnerability. That lesson had been drilled into him since childhood. Then why was he hesitating now? Luca looked back toward Elena. She stood there exhausted but defiant, terrified but refusing to break. Every instinct told him she would survive anything rather than surrender. He understood people like that. Too well. Finally Luca spoke. No. Matteo blinked. Boss. She stays. That's not going to go over well with your father. I wasn't asking permission. Elena stared at him silently, confused. Suspicious. Slightly shocked. Luca approached her slowly. You're under my protection now. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. Your protection started with chloroform. Still counts. You're insane. Probably. Their eyes locked again. Longer this time. Too long. Elena became suddenly aware of how close he stood. Close enough to feel warmth beneath his calm exterior. Close enough to notice the faint exhaustion hidden behind his eyes. Luca noticed her staring too. Neither moved away. Then Matteo's phone buzzed again violently. He checked the message and swore. What? Matteo looked grim now. Your father's sending someone. Luca already knew who. The realization darkened his expression instantly. Elena noticed. Luca answered quietly. Sofia. Elena frowned. Who's Sofia? Before Luca could answer, a female voice echoed from the penthouse entrance behind them. She's the woman he's supposed to marry. Every person in the room turned instantly. Sofia Moretti stood near the doorway in a crimson designer dress with rain dripping from her coat. Beautiful, elegant, deadly. And the way she looked at Elena made one thing immediately clear. She already hated her. Sofia slowly removed her gloves while studying the destroyed penthouse. Then her eyes landed on Luca standing far too close to another woman. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, Sofia said softly, this certainly explains why Blackridge is suddenly on fire. You. Elena folded her arms. You people really need less dramatic entrances. Sofia ignored her completely. Her attention remained fixed on Luca. And for the first time all night, Luca DeSantis looked genuinely cornered. The silence inside the penthouse became razor-sharp. Rain hammered against the shattered windows, while Sofia Moretti stood near the entrance like she owned the building. Maybe she did. In Blackridge, power mattered more than legal documents, and Sofia came from one of the most dangerous Mafia families on the East Coast. Elegant crimson dress, diamond earrings, dark hair styled perfectly despite the storm outside. She looked like luxury wrapped around a loaded weapon. But the thing Elena noticed first wasn't Sofia's beauty. It was her eyes. Cold, calculating, possessive. Especially when those eyes landed on Luca standing inches away from another woman. Interesting. Very interesting. Sofia removed her wet coat slowly and handed it to one of the guards without taking her eyes off Elena. No one told me we were entertaining guests tonight. Elena crossed her arms. No one told me kidnappers came with fiancés. Sofia finally looked at her directly. The faint smile on her lips never reached her eyes. And no one told me hostages became comfortable enough to joke. Luca stepped between them slightly. That's enough. Sofia's gaze snapped toward him. And there it was. The real tension. Not jealousy. Ownership. People in their world didn't love normally. They possessed, controlled, protected, destroyed, sometimes all at once. Sofia walked farther into the office, heels clicking softly against marble floors. The guards around the room visibly straightened around her. Another dangerous person everyone feared. Fantastic. Elena suddenly felt exhausted. I'm going to assume this isn't a healthy relationship dynamic, she muttered. Matteo almost laughed again before catching Luca's warning glance. Sofia ignored Elena entirely while approaching Luca. You kidnapped the wrong woman, she said calmly. Father's furious. Luca's expression darkened slightly. He'll survive. He thinks she's a liability. She is. Elena raised an eyebrow. Oh good. We're bonding. Sofia finally turned toward her fully now. Sharp. Focused. Assessing. Elena recognized the look immediately. Predators always evaluated weaknesses first. What exactly are you? Sofia asked softly. Elena shrugged. Tired, no. Sofia smiled faintly. I mean dangerous. The room quieted again, because Sofia wasn't asking casually. She already sensed something unusual about Elena. Luca answered before Elena could. She stays here. Sofia's attention shifted back toward him. That wasn't the agreement. She's under my protection. Something cold flashed across Sofia's face. Tiny, controlled, but real. Elena noticed immediately. And suddenly she understood. This woman wasn't angry because Luca brought home another woman. She was angry because Luca never protected anyone. Especially not emotionally. Sofia stepped closer toward Luca. You're risking family stability over a stranger. Luca's voice stayed calm. I'm handling it. That's not what your father thinks. I don't particularly care. The temperature in the room seemed to drop instantly. Because nobody spoke about Marco DeSantis like that openly. Not even Luca. Sofia studied him for several long seconds. Then her gaze drifted slowly toward Elena again. This time with something far more dangerous beneath it. Curiosity. That worried Elena more than hatred would have. You should leave while you still can, Sofia said quietly. Elena tilted her head. Interesting advice from the fiancé of the man who kidnapped me. Sofia smiled softly. No. That was sympathy. And somehow that sounded far more threatening. 2 hours later, Blackridge drowned beneath midnight rain while Luca stood alone on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city. The storm air smelled like wet concrete and gunpowder, his favorite combination lately. Below him, headlights crawled through flooded streets while police sirens echoed somewhere far below. The city never really slept, it hunted. Just like the people inside it. The balcony door opened quietly behind him. He already knew who it was, Elena asleep? Matteo asked. No. She hasn't stopped pacing. Luca took another sip of whiskey. She's scared. Matteo leaned against the doorway carefully. She hides it well. So do most survivors. That answer surprised Matteo slightly, because Luca rarely acknowledged trauma in others. Usually weakness irritated him. But Elena wasn't weak. Broken maybe. Haunted definitely. But not weak. Matteo hesitated before speaking again. Sophia's right, you know. Luca stayed silent. This situation's dangerous. It was dangerous before the kidnapping. Not like this. Matteo lowered his voice. Your father's already hearing rumors. Luca's jaw tightened slightly. Rumors in Mafia families spread faster than bullets. The feared hair protecting an unknown woman. That smelled like vulnerability. And vulnerability got people killed. She saved my life, Luca said quietly. Matteo blinked once. There it is. The real reason. Luca continued staring over the city. If she hadn't seen that sniper reflection, you'd be dead? Yes. Silence settled again. Then Matteo asked carefully, what are you going to do with her? Luca answered immediately. Find out who's hunting her. And after that? That question lingered longer. Long enough to matter. Finally, Luca muttered, I don't know. That answer unsettled Matteo more than anything else tonight. Because Luca DeSantis always knew exactly what he wanted. Always. Inside the penthouse guest suite, Elena stood near the massive windows watching rain race down the glass. Luxury bed. Private fireplace. Designer furniture. A room bigger than most apartments. Still felt like a cage. She wrapped Luca's borrowed black dress shirt tighter around herself. Her original had been destroyed during the attack, and unfortunately, his clothes smelled annoyingly good. That realization irritated her deeply. A soft knock echoed from the doorway. Elena reached automatically beneath the pillow where she'd hidden a stolen kitchen knife. Come in. The door opened. Luca entered slowly. Dark shirt rolled at the sleeves now. Tie gone. Exhaustion finally visible beneath his controlled expression. For the first time since meeting him, he looked human. Dangerously human. His eyes drifted briefly over her appearance. Bare legs. His oversized shirt falling loosely against her body. Wet hair cascading over one shoulder. Luca looked away almost immediately. That alone fascinated Elena. Most powerful men stared openly. Luca controlled himself, which somehow made him more dangerous. You planning to stab someone with that? He asked calmly. Elena froze slightly, then slowly revealed the knife. You noticed. I notice everything. That sounds exhausting. It is. He walked farther into the room. I brought food. Elena looked genuinely suspicious. You poisoning me finally. If I poison you, Matteo wins $50,000. She blinked. You people gamble on murder. What gamble on everything? Despite herself, Elena laughed softly. The sound lingered strangely in the room. Luca placed the tray onto the table near her. Real food. Pasta. Bread. Wine. Not exactly hostage treatment. You keep treating me like a guest, Elena said carefully. You're still technically kidnapped. Yes. Very luxurious crime. Luca studied her quietly for a moment. Then, you should leave Blackridge. That surprised her. What? When this settles, he said calmly. Go somewhere nobody can find you. Elena's expression darkened slightly. You think I haven't tried? Luca stayed silent. She moved toward the windows again. There's nowhere people like me disappear forever. Everyone disappears eventually. That sounds like something a Mafia hair would say before burying bodies. His mouth twitched faintly. That tiny almost smile. Elena noticed it instantly, and hated herself slightly for liking it. You know what's weird? She asked. What? You don't act the way people describe you. Luca leaned against the doorway. And how do people describe me? Violent. Ruthless. Sociopathic. All accurate. That made him still slightly. Elena looked toward him carefully now. There's something underneath all that. Careful. What? You're starting to sound curious. Maybe she was. That was the problem. She should hate him. Fear him. Plan escape routes constantly. Instead, she found herself wanting to understand him. Dangerous mistake. For both of them. Suddenly, Luca's phone buzzed sharply. His expression changed instantly after reading the message. Cold again. Murderously cold. What happened? Elena asked. Nightclub meeting. With? Revel suppliers. And. Luca grabbed his jacket. Someone leaked the location. Elena immediately understood. Ambush. Before she could speak, Luca looked directly at her. Stay here. Oh, absolutely not. His eyes narrowed. You're safer here. I was almost assassinated here 3 hours ago. Still safer. Elena crossed her arms stubbornly. You're not locking me inside a penthouse. Yes, I am. You're very controlling. You're very difficult. Maybe because kidnapping isn't my preferred social activity. Luca stepped closer slowly. Too close again. Every conversation somehow ended with them standing inches apart. You don't understand this world, he said quietly. Elena's expression hardened instantly. Don't do that. What? Don't talk to me like I'm fragile. Luca studied her face carefully. Then nodded once. Fair enough. Finally he spoke again. Stay alive until I get back. And before Elena could answer, he left. And for 3 hours later, music thundered through one of Blackridge's most exclusive underground nightclubs. Smoke. Neon lights. Luxury liquor. Armed criminals pretending to dance. Luca moved through the private upper level surrounded by guards while tension filled the air. This meeting already smelled wrong. Too quiet. Too easy. Matteo approached. Perimeter feels off. I know. Luca scanned the crowded club below carefully. Then his phone vibrated again. Unknown number. He answered immediately. Silence. Then Elena's voice whispered through the line. Don't panic. Everything inside Luca went cold instantly. Where are you? Technically, she said softly. Escaping. Luca closed his eyes briefly. Of course she did. You left the penthouse. You left me with emotionally unstable bodyguards. Elena. Then gunfire exploded downstairs. The nightclub erupted into screaming chaos instantly. Ambush. Luca grabbed his pistol immediately. Matteo shouted, Boss! More gunshots, people running, blood spraying across dance floors, and through the chaos, Luca heard Elena breathing shakily through the phone. Then, a loud crash, her frightened gasp, followed by men shouting nearby. Luca's heart slammed hard against his ribs. Elena? No answer. Elena? Finally, her voice returned breathlessly. I think people are trying to kill me again. Luca turned toward the balcony railing overlooking the streets below, and there, 3 blocks away, he spotted Elena sprinting through rain-soaked traffic while armed men chased her down the street. Without hesitation, Luca vaulted over the balcony railing. Matteo shouted behind him, L.U. But Luca already landed hard on the lower platform below before sprinting directly into gunfire. Because suddenly nothing mattered more than reaching her first. Rava rain soaked Elena completely as she ran through crowded midnight streets. This was why she never stayed anywhere. This was why attachment got people killed. A black SUV swerved toward the curb ahead. Gunmen exited fast. Elena turned sharply into an alley. Then someone grabbed her violently. She reacted instantly. Elbow strike. Knife from her boot. The attacker cursed. Jesus Christ. Elena. Luca. She froze. He shoved her behind him as bullets slammed into brick walls nearby. What part of stay alive inside the penthouse confused you? He snapped. What part of your city constantly trying to murder me sounds relaxing? Another shooter appeared. Luca killed him instantly. No hesitation. No humanity. Just lethal precision. Elena watched him differently now. This was the real Luca. Not the teasing conversations. Not the quiet whiskey moments. This man was terrifying. More vehicles arrived nearby. Luca grabbed her hand hard. Run. They sprinted deeper into the alley while rain poured around them. Bullets ricocheted off dumpsters behind them. Then suddenly, Elena cried out sharply. Luca turned instantly. Blood spread across her side beneath the soaked shirt. She'd been hit. Something dark and violent exploded inside him immediately. Move! Luca barked. Elena stumbled but kept running. They finally crashed through a hidden service entrance leading into an abandoned warehouse. Safe. For now. Luca locked the steel door behind them, while Elena leaned heavily against nearby crates, breathing unevenly. Blood dripped onto concrete. Luca crossed the distance between them instantly. Let me see. I'm fine. That's blood. Excellent observation. Luca grabbed her wrist gently but firmly. The touch sent strange heat through both of them despite the chaos surrounding them. Elena hissed softly as he lifted the blood-stained shirt slightly. The bullet had grazed her side. Painful, but survivable. Still, Luca's face darkened like someone had personally insulted him. Elena noticed immediately, and suddenly, for the first time in years, someone looked at her injury like it mattered. Not strategically, personally. Luca's voice lowered dangerously. I'm going to kill every person who touched you tonight. Elena stared at him quietly. Rain thundered against the warehouse roof overhead, both breathing hard, standing far too close again. Then softly, almost vulnerable, she asked the question neither of them expected. Why do you look at me like you already lost me? Rainwater dripped from Luca's hair onto the concrete floor, while silence settled heavily inside the abandoned warehouse. Elena's question still hung between them. Why do you look at me like you already lost me? Luca didn't answer immediately. He couldn't, because the truth irritated him. The moment he saw blood on her shirt, something inside him reacted too fast, too personally. And men like Luca DeSantis survived by never reacting personally. Elena leaned against stacked cargo crates while holding pressure against the wound on her side. It burned badly. Not fatal. Still enough to make her breathing uneven. Luca grabbed a dusty first aid kit from an emergency cabinet nearby. Set? Elena raised an eyebrow weakly. That sounded romantic. You're bleeding on my floor. Technically, this warehouse belongs to rats. Luca knelt in front of her. The movement felt strangely intimate. Dangerously intimate, especially when he carefully lifted the soaked black shirt higher to examine the injury. Elena inhaled sharply. Not entirely from pain. His fingers were warm, steady, unexpectedly gentle for a man capable of killing without hesitation. The graze wound stretched along her ribs, blood still running slowly down her skin. Luca's jaw tightened. He hated seeing damage on things under his protection. That realization hit him immediately afterward. Things, not people. Important distinction. Yet somehow Elena no longer felt like a responsibility. She felt personal. Very dangerous. You're staring. Elena murmured softly. Luca grabbed antiseptic. You're distracting. That's not usually a complaint. The antiseptic touched the wound. Elena hissed sharply. Oh, fantastic. Liquid fire. Hold still. You know, she muttered through clenched teeth. Most kidnappers skip the medical aftercare. Most hostages don't insult them continuously. Maybe your standards are too low. Despite himself, Luca almost smiled again. That annoyed him deeply. He cleaned the wound carefully while Elena studied him in silence. Up close, he looked exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. Like years of violence had carved permanent shadows beneath his eyes. You've done this before, Elena said quietly. Luca wrapped fresh gauze around her waist. Yes. Field injuries. Yes. You were military. That made him pause briefly. Interesting. Most people assumed Mafia immediately. Not trained combat history. Private security work. He answered calmly. Meaning illegal things with expensive weapons. Meaning dangerous things with expensive weapons. She watched him tie the bandage securely. You hide your injuries too. Luca glanced up at her. What? The shoulder. His expression darkened slightly. Elena pointed toward the bloodstain barely visible beneath his soaked black shirt. You got clipped during the alley shooting. He hadn't even noticed. Adrenaline. Classic combat focus. Elena sighed tiredly. You're impossible. I hear that often. Take the shirt off. Luca blinked once. That sounded more aggressive than intended. Elena admitted. For the first time all night, Luca actually smiled faintly. Tiny. Dangerous. Enough to change his entire face. Elena immediately hated how attractive that made him. Very inconvenient. Luca removed the soaked jacket first before unbuttoning the black shirt slowly. Elena's pulse betrayed her instantly. Scars. Several. Old knife wounds across his ribs. A bullet mark near his shoulder. Another faint scar near his lower abdomen. This man had survived things. Violent things. Her eyes drifted upward toward his shoulder injury. Minor graze. Still bleeding. Elena carefully opened another antiseptic wipe. This is probably karma. Luca muttered. What is? Getting treated by my hostage. You keep calling me that like we're not emotionally co-dependent already. That made him laugh quietly. Actually laugh. The sound startled both of them. Because it sounded real. Not cruel. Not cold. Human. Elena cleaned the wound gently while thunder rolled overhead. The warehouse lights flickered dimly. Outside, Blackridge drowned beneath another midnight storm. Inside, something far more dangerous was happening. They were becoming comfortable together. And comfort created attachment. Attachment destroyed people like them. You should have stayed in the penthouse, Luca said quietly. Elena focused on wrapping the bandage. And you should stop walking into gunfire like you're immortal. I had it handled. You jumped off a nightclub balcony. It was faster. You're clinically insane. Possibly. Her fingers brushed his skin again accidentally. Both went still for half a second. Tiny moment. Heavy silence. Then Luca's phone rang sharply. Reality returned immediately. He answered without looking away from her. What? Matteo's voice exploded through the speaker. Where the hell are you? Warehouse District. You disappeared into an ambush chasing your hostage. She was targeted. So were you. Gunfire echoed faintly through Matteo's line. The nightclub situation still active. Luca's eyes hardened instantly. Status. 3 dead. 2 wounded. Someone leaked the meeting location. Another betrayal. Another internal leak. The family was fracturing faster now. Matteo lowered his voice. There's more. Luca already knew. My father. He's furious. Good. Luca. Matteo hesitated carefully. Sophia's making moves. That caught his attention. How? She's pushing the family council hard. Says Elena's compromising your judgment. Elena looked away slightly at that. Compromising. Right. That's what this was becoming. Luca ended the call slowly. The warehouse became quiet again. Then Elena spoke softly. You should let me go. Luca looked at her immediately. No. You're starting wars because of me. That war already existed. But I'm making it worse. You think too highly of yourself. She stared at him, then narrowed her eyes slightly. That was almost reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. Luca stood and rebuttoned his shirt slowly. We're leaving. We're somewhere safer. You've said that before. And yet you're still alive. A fair point. Arc by sunrise, Blackridge media exploded into chaos. News stations replayed footage from the gala kidnapping nonstop. Luxury hotel surveillance. Witness interviews. Panic. Mystery. The public officially believed one thing: Luca DeSantis kidnapped prosecutor Victor Hale's daughter. And now half the city thought organized crime was heading toward open war. Inside a secured private conference room above one of Blackridge's casinos, televisions blared breaking news coverage while Mafia captains argued violently. "She's leverage," one man shouted. "She's exposure," another snapped back. Marco DeSantis sat silently at the head of the table like death, wearing an expensive suit. Older now, silver-haired, but still terrifying. Every person in the room feared him, even Luca, though Luca would never admit it. Marco finally spoke quietly. "Where is my son?" Silence answered. Because nobody knew. Marco's eyes drifted towards Sophia standing near the windows. Unlike the others, she looked perfectly calm. Always composed. Always calculating. "He'll protect her," Sophia said softly. Marco's expression darkened slightly. "That concerns me." "It should." One captain scoffed. "He's distracted by a pretty face." Sophia looked toward him slowly. "No," she said coldly. "Luca doesn't get distracted." The room quieted instantly. Because she understood Luca better than anyone here. If Luca was protecting Elena personally, then emotions were involved, and emotional men became unpredictable, dangerous, weak, or catastrophic. Marco leaned back slightly. "Find the girl." His voice became colder. "And if Luca interferes," nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Marco finished quietly. "Remind him blood rules everything." Later that afternoon, Elena stood inside yet another luxury property owned secretly by the DeSantis organization. This one overlooked the ocean outside Blackridge. Private. Remote. Beautiful. Still a cage. She stared at the news coverage replaying her kidnapping again on television. "They really love dramatic music," she muttered. Luca entered carrying coffee. "You're trending online." "Wonderful. My lifelong dream." He handed her a cup. Black coffee, no sugar. She looked surprised. "You remembered. You hate sweet coffee. You paid attention. You complain loudly." Affair. Elena sat near the massive windows while Luca reviewed messages on his phone. The tension between them felt different now. Softer. More dangerous. No longer hostage and captor. Something blurrier. And that terrified Elena more than the gunman did. "You know what's funny?" she asked quietly. "What?" "I should hate you." Luca looked up slowly. But you keep saving my life. You saved mine first." That feels less romantic when phrased competitively. Another almost smile. Again. This was becoming a problem. Suddenly Luca's phone buzzed with an incoming video call. Victor Hale. Elena's stomach tightened immediately. Luca answered calmly. Victor Hale appeared furious. Silver-haired. Sharp-eyed. Exhausted. "Where is she?" "Alive." "I want proof." Luca handed the phone toward Elena casually. Victor's face shifted instantly. "Elena, I'm alive. Are you hurt?" "A little kidnapped. A little shot at. Average Tuesday." Victor exhaled shakily. "You need to leave Blackridge immediately." Luca watched carefully now, noticing the fear in Victor's voice. Real fear. Interesting. Victor continued urgently. "They know where you are now. They already tried killing me twice." Elena replied quietly. "That was only the beginning." Luca stepped closer slowly. "Who exactly is hunting her?" Victor looked directly at him, then said the one sentence Luca least expected. "The same people your father used to work with." Silence. Complete silence. Elena froze. Luca's expression darkened dangerously. Victor continued. "There are old operations connected to trafficking routes, political blackmail, private auctions." "Enough," Elena whispered suddenly. Victor stopped immediately. Pain crossed Elena's face. Not fear, memory. Luca noticed all of it. Victor softened slightly. Lena. No. Her voice cracked quietly. I can't go back there. You won't. You can't promise that. Then, the line disconnected suddenly. Signal jammed. Luca checked the phone instantly. No network. Every instinct inside him sharpened. Danger. Outside the mansion, engines roared suddenly. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Elena looked toward Luca immediately. He already had a gun in his hand. Of course he did. Stay behind me, he ordered calmly. Oh, absolutely not. Tires screeched outside. Men shouting. Automatic weapons loading. Luca moved toward the security monitors near the wall. Then froze. Because the vehicles outside weren't enemy mercenaries. They belonged to the DeSantis family. And standing beside the lead SUV in the pouring rain was Sofia Moretti, holding a cigarette in one hand and a very dangerous smile on her face. Rain crashed violently against the oceanfront mansion while black SUVs lined the private driveway outside like funeral cars. Every instinct inside Elena screamed, "Run, now." But Luca stood unnervingly calm beside the security monitors, one hand resting near his pistol while Sofia Moretti stared directly into the surveillance camera outside, smiling. That smile bothered Elena more than guns ever did. Because Sofia looked like someone who enjoyed watching people panic. How many? Luca asked quietly. Matteo checked another monitor feed. 12 outside. More probably hidden in the tree line. Family soldiers. Yes. Luca's jaw tightened slightly. That made this worse. Enemy attacks were predictable. Family attacks were personal. Elena crossed her arms tightly near the kitchen island. Should I hide dramatically upstairs, or is this the part where everyone points guns at each other? And neither man answered. Which was answer enough. Sofia stepped forward outside and tapped lightly against the mansion's front gate camera. Then she spoke calmly into the intercom. Luca. Her voice echoed through the speakers. We need to talk. Elena muttered softly. That sentence has literally never improved anything. Matteo almost smiled. Luke ignored both of them while watching Sofia carefully on screen. Rain soaked her crimson coat now, dark hair falling over one shoulder while armed DeSantis soldiers waited behind her. No visible aggression. No immediate weapons drawn. That meant political pressure first. Violence second. Classic Sofia. What does she want? Elena asked quietly. Luca answered without looking away from the monitor. To see whether I've lost my mind. And have you? That finally made him glance toward her. Long look. Heavy silence. Then, still undecided. Heat rose annoyingly beneath Elena's skin again. Fantastic, trauma bonding with a Mafia hair. Excellent life choices. Luca pressed the intercom button. You brought half the city with you. Sofia smiled faintly outside. You stopped answering calls. I was busy. Her eyes shifted subtly toward the camera. Toward Elena. Yes, Sofia said softly. I noticed. The tension in the room thickened instantly. Matteo stepped closer toward Luca carefully. Could be a trap. Everything's a trap. Helpful observation. Luca finally holstered his weapon. Opened the gate. Elena blinked. Absolutely not. Luca looked toward her. She's not here to kill you. That's somehow less comforting. Sofia entered the mansion 3 minutes later alone. No guards. No visible weapons. Still the most dangerous person in the building besides Luca himself. She removed her rain-soaked gloves slowly while examining the room. Her eyes eventually landed on Elena sitting near the kitchen counter wearing Luca's black shirt. Interesting. Very interesting. Sofia's expression barely changed. But Luca noticed. Of course he did. You're wearing his clothes. Sofia observed calmly. Elena looked down at herself. Oh wow, I am. Matteo turned away immediately to hide his reaction. Luca poured whiskey in 2 glasses without speaking. Sofia accepted one. Neither drank immediately. That alone told Elena everything she needed to know about their relationship. This wasn't romance. This was strategy dressed as intimacy. Sophia sat across from Luca slowly. You've created a problem. She already existed. No. Sophia corrected softly. You brought her into the family. Elena sighed. You people keep discussing me like I'm radioactive. Sophia finally looked directly at her. Aren't you? That shut the room up briefly. Because honestly, maybe she was. Luca leaned back slightly. What did my father send you to say? Sophia studied him quietly for several seconds before answering. He wants the girl gone. Elena's stomach tightened slightly despite herself. Sophia continued calmly. The council believes she's destabilizing operations. She's not responsible for the attacks. No. Sophia agreed. But she's causing emotion. Her eyes shifted meaningfully toward Luca. And there it was. The real accusation. Not weakness. Attachment. Dangerous attachment. Luca's expression hardened instantly. You're overstepping. Am I? Sophia leaned forward slightly. I've known you for 8 years, Luca. Silence. You don't protect people. Another silence. You use them. Elena looked away toward the storm outside, because somehow hearing that hurt more than it should have. Sophia's voice softened dangerously. But this girl. Her eyes moved toward Elena again. She changes your behavior. Luca stood abruptly. The movement made the room tense immediately. We're done here. No. Sophia said quietly. You need to hear the rest. Luca didn't move. Sophia placed a thin manila folder onto the marble table between them. Elena Vale doesn't exist, she said calmly, but this does. Luca opened the folder slowly, then went completely still. Elena noticed immediately. Fear slid coldly down her spine. What is it? Luca didn't answer. His eyes scanned photographs inside the file with growing darkness. Old warehouse pictures, shipping manifests, private auction guest lists, and one grainy photograph taken nearly 15 years ago. A terrified teenage girl sitting inside a locked room. Elena. Her breath stopped. No. No, no, no. The room suddenly tilted sideways. Luca looked up slowly. What is this? Sophia's expression remained unreadable. Old family business. Elena stared at the photograph like it might burn through her hands. Memory crashed into her violently. The smell of bleach. Locked doors. Men laughing downstairs. That room. God, that room. Her breathing became uneven instantly. Luca noticed immediately. Elena. She backed away from the table. No. Elena. No. The panic in her voice shocked everyone. She grabbed the photograph with shaking hands. The date stamped in the corner nearly made her collapse. 15 years ago. DeSantis shipping yard. Her eyes snapped toward Luca. You knew? He frowned immediately. What? Your family knew. Sophia answered quietly instead. Marco funded several private operations during those years. The blood drained from Luca's face slowly. No. Sophia's voice stayed calm. You were too young to know details. Knew. But he already saw truth written all over the documents. Human trafficking routes. Private buyer lists. Political protection payments. His father's signatures. The DeSantis empire wasn't merely violent. It was built on monsters. Elena looked physically sick now. You told me your family handled weapons. Luca stared at the photographs silently. Because until this moment, he believed that too. Sophia spoke softly. There were rumors years ago. Missing girls connected to transport routes. Luca's voice dropped dangerously low. You knew? I suspected. And never told me. You never wanted truth. Sophia replied coldly. You wanted power. That hit harder than any bullet, because part of it was true. Luca spent years becoming the perfect heir without asking enough questions. Who paid? Who suffered? Who disappeared? He built himself into a weapon for an empire he never fully examined, And now Elena stood in front of him holding proof that his family helped destroy her life. The silence became unbearable. Then Elena laughed softly. Broken sound. Wow! Her eyes filled suddenly, not weakness, rage. Years and years of buried rage. I escaped monsters. She looked directly at Luca now, and accidentally fell into another monster's bed. Luca's expression darkened instantly. You think I knew about this? I don't know what to think anymore. That hurt more than it should have. Sophia watched everything carefully now. Every glance. Every silence. Every crack forming between them. Then her phone buzzed. She checked the screen and smiled faintly. Uh-oh! Luca noticed immediately. What? Sophia slipped the phone back into her purse. Nothing. Which meant definitely something. Matteo's phone rang simultaneously. He answered quickly, then swore violently. Boss. Luca turned instantly. What happened? Matteo looked furious now. Our perimeter teams just got hit. Gunfire suddenly exploded outside the mansion. The windows rattled instantly. Elena flinched hard. More gunshots followed. Then screaming, chaos erupted outside. Luca grabbed his weapon immediately. What the hell is happening? Matteo looked toward Sophia. Realization hit instantly, and Luca saw it too. Sophia remained perfectly calm. Too calm. You leaked our location, Luca said quietly. Sophia tilted her head slightly. You chose her over the family. Gunfire intensified outside. Black SUVs exploded into flames beyond the windows. Elena stared at Sophia in disbelief. You psychopath. Sophia finally stood slowly. No, she said softly. I'm surviving. Luca moved toward her dangerously. But Sophia smiled. And before you threaten me? She nodded toward Elena. You should move. Luca turned instantly. Red laser dots suddenly appeared across Elena's chest from outside the windows. Snipers. D.O.B.U.N. Luca tackled Elena to the floor just as bullets shattered the glass wall behind them. The mansion erupted into war instantly. Guards opened fire. Furniture exploded. Smoke filled the room. Matteo killed one attacker through the shattered windows while Luca shielded Elena beneath him. Sophia calmly stepped backward away from the chaos. Untouched, untargeted. Of course. This had been arranged. You set us up. Elena breathed. Sophia looked down at her without emotion. No, she said quietly. I gave the family a choice. Another explosion rocked the mansion. Fire alarms screamed overhead. Luca looked genuinely furious now. Not cold, not controlled. Furious. You betrayed me. Sophia's expression finally cracked slightly. Pain. Real pain. You betrayed us first. Then she walked away into the smoke while DeSantis soldiers flooded the mansion from outside. Luca grabbed Elena's hand hard. We're leaving. Gunfire thundered around them while flames spread across the lower floor. Elena stumbled beside him through smoke-filled hallways. What about your men? Matteo's getting them out. More bullets ripped through walls nearby. Luca pulled open a hidden steel door behind a bookshelf. Underground tunnel. Of course, the Mafia mansion had escape tunnels. Elena coughed through smoke while following him downward into darkness. The steel door slammed shut behind them. Silence. Only distant explosions overhead. Emergency lights flickered dimly red through the underground passage. Elena leaned against the concrete wall, breathing hard. Everything hurt. Physically, emotionally, mentally. Luca stood several feet away, staring at the floor silently. The weight of the photograph still crushing him. Finally, Elena whispered, "Did you know?" He answered immediately, "No." And somehow, she believed him. That made everything worse. Luca stepped closer slowly. For once, he looked uncertain. Not like a mafia hair. Not like a killer. Just a man realizing his entire life might have been built on evil. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Elena closed her eyes briefly. The sincerity in his voice nearly broke her. Because monsters weren't supposed to apologize. Then Luca spoke again. Low. Rough. almost vulnerable. If you leave now, his eyes lifted toward hers, I'll still come looking for you. He and Elena suddenly realized the most dangerous thing about Luca DeSantis wasn't his violence. It was that despite everything, part of her wanted him to find her. The safe house sat beside a dark northern lake nearly 4 hours outside Blackridge. No neighbors, no city lights, no gunfire echoing through alleyways. Just endless pine trees swaying beneath cold wind and black water stretching beneath the moonlight. For the first time in years, Elena heard silence, real silence, and somehow it terrified her more than violence did. The cabin itself was surprisingly beautiful. Old cedar walls, stone fireplace, warm lighting, large windows overlooking the lake. It didn't feel like one of Luca DeSantis's properties. It felt human, which immediately made Elena suspicious. She stepped inside slowly while Luca locked the door behind them. You own a serial killer cabin now. Luca removed his jacket. It's a safe house. It looks like someone writes emotional poetry here. That would be Matteo. Elena blinked. What? I'm kidding. Oh, thank God. Despite everything that happened in the tunnel, despite the photographs, despite discovering Luca's family helped build the nightmare she escaped, she still laughed around him. That should have been impossible. And yet here they were. Luca moved toward the fireplace while Elena wandered farther into the cabin carefully. No guards, no cameras visible, no luxury marble floors or armed soldiers. Just quiet. You come here often? She asked softly. Not anymore. Why? Luca stared into the unlit fireplace. Too peaceful. That answer hurt in ways Elena couldn't explain. Because she understood exactly what he meant. People shaped by violence eventually stopped trusting peace. Peace felt temporary, fragile, like something waiting to be ruined. Elena moved toward the giant windows overlooking the lake. Moonlight reflected silver across the water while distant thunder rolled softly beyond the mountains. Beautiful, and somehow sad. Your family's searching for us, she said quietly. Yes. You're officially at war with them now. Another silence. Yes. She turned toward him slowly. You gave up everything for someone you barely know. Luca's expression darkened slightly. I know enough. That's not an answer. No. He admitted quietly. It isn't. The tension between them felt different tonight. No longer sharp. No longer defensive. Just exhausted honesty. Both too tired to keep pretending they weren't emotionally wrecked. Luca finally lit the fireplace. Warm orange light filled the cabin instantly. Elena watched him carefully while he moved around the room. Without bodyguards and expensive suits surrounding him, he looked younger somehow. Still dangerous, but less untouchable, like the man beneath the reputation was finally visible. And unfortunately, Elena liked that man far too much already. Dangerous mistake. Very dangerous. You should sleep, Luca said quietly. She laughed softly. I haven't slept properly in years. Neither have I. That surprised her slightly. Then again, maybe it shouldn't have. Luca handed her a folded sweatshirt from a nearby cabinet. You can wear this. Elena looked down at the black oversized hoodie. Simple. Comfortable. Normal. Something about that nearly broke her emotionally. Because nobody had done something normal for her in a very long time. Thank you, she whispered. Luca looked briefly caught off guard by the sincerity. Then he nodded once. You'll find blankets upstairs. Are you sleeping down here? Wes? Why? His eyes met hers steadily. Because if someone comes for you tonight. His voice lowered slightly. They'll reach me first. Elena's chest tightened painfully. Damn him. Damn this. Why did the terrifying Mafia hair keep saying things that sounded dangerously close to caring? She escaped before responding. Upstairs. Distance. Needed distance. Because every second near him weakened her judgment. An hour later, rain tapped softly against the cabin windows, while Luca sat alone near the fireplace nursing a glass of whiskey. The flames reflected in his eyes, but his thoughts stayed dark. Photographs, shipping manifests, his father's signatures, children sold through operations carrying the DeSantis name. He spent years becoming worthy of inheriting that empire, and now all he saw was blood. Luca rubbed a hand across his jaw slowly. He remembered being 14 years old and asking Marco once why powerful men feared the DeSantis family. Marco answered simply, because fear builds kingdoms. At the time, Luca admired that. Now it sounded monstrous. Floorboards creaked softly overhead. Elena descended the stairs wearing the oversized hoodie and loose pajama pants she found upstairs. Luca looked up, then immediately regretted it, because she looked devastatingly beautiful like this. Not glamorous, not dressed for charity galas, just real. Soft hair loose around her shoulders, bare legs disappearing beneath the oversized hoodie, tired eyes finally unguarded. Human, which somehow made her more dangerous than before. Elena noticed him staring. "Careful," she murmured. "You're developing emotions again." Luca took another sip of whiskey. Temporary condition. She smiled faintly before moving toward the kitchen. The cabin lights cast warm gold across her skin while she searched cabinets. "You keep food here." "Wes?" Serial killer confirmed. Luca almost smiled again. This woman was becoming a serious problem. Elena finally found coffee supplies. Good. Necessary. Within minutes the cabin filled with the scent of fresh coffee and rain, strangely domestic, like two normal people hiding from ordinary problems. Instead of a traumatized survivor and a Mafia heir currently betraying his empire, Elena carried 2 mugs toward the fireplace. One black, one slightly less depressing. Luca accepted his cup carefully. Their fingers brushed again, and again neither moved away immediately. Silence settled softly between them. Comfortable silence, the kind neither of them trusted. Elena sat across from him near the fire. "You know what's weird?" "What?" "I should have run already." "Wes." "But I didn't." Luca studied the flames quietly. "No." "Why do you think that is?" His gaze lifted toward her slowly. "Because you're tired of running." That answer landed too accurately. Elena looked away first. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the lake shimmered beneath moonlight, and inside the cabin something dangerous was happening. They were beginning to feel safe with each other. The worst possible outcome. "Elena." Her eyes lifted again. Luca rarely said her name softly, and every time he did, it affected her more than it should. "What?" "Tell me something true." She frowned slightly. "That's vague." "Something nobody else knows." Elena stared into her coffee quietly. Then finally whispered, "I don't remember my mother's face anymore." The confession hurt coming out. Years of trauma erased pieces of childhood slowly. Faces. Voices. Memories. Sometimes Elena feared the monsters stole more than her freedom. Maybe they stole parts of her identity too. Luca watched her carefully. Not pity. Never pity, just understanding. Then quietly, "I remember my first kill." Elena looked up sharply. Luca stared into the fire. "I was 19. No emotion in his voice, which somehow made it worse. "My father arranged it." Silence. "He said if I wanted respect, I needed blood on my hands." Elena's chest tightened. Luca continued quietly. "The man begged." The flames cracked sharply. "I shot him anyway." His jaw tightened slightly. And afterward, for the first time since meeting him, Luca looked almost ashamed. "I waited to feel something." Elena whispered softly, "Did you?" "No." That answer haunted the room. Elena slowly set down her coffee, then moved beside him near the fireplace. Close enough to feel his warmth, close enough to see exhaustion hidden behind his cold exterior. "You were 19, she said quietly. "I still pulled the trigger." Wes. Her fingers brushed lightly against his scarred hand resting beside him. But someone taught you that survival required becoming a weapon. Luca looked at her immediately, because nobody had ever phrased it that way before. Not excuse, not judgment. Understanding. Dangerous understanding. The air shifted between them. Heat, emotion, something fragile and terrifying. Elena's pulse quickened slightly as Luca's gaze dropped briefly toward her lips. Oh, no. Very bad idea. Very then Luca's phone buzzed violently on the table beside them. Reality crashed back instantly. Matteo. Luca answered immediately. What? You've got company. Every instinct sharpened immediately. Luca stood fast. Ooh, federal convoy approaching your location. Elena froze. Victor. Of course. Luca grabbed his weapon instantly while headlights appeared through the trees outside the cabin. Multiple SUVs. Government issue. Doors slammed outside. Agents spreading position. Elena stood slowly near the fireplace while tension flooded the room again. A knock echoed against the cabin door. 3 sharp hits. Then Victor Hale's voice, Elena. She closed her eyes briefly. God. Victor spoke again from outside. You need to come with us. Luca's expression became unreadable. Elena. Victor continued. This isn't safe anymore. The room felt painfully divided suddenly. One man represented the past, protection, survival. The other represented danger, violence, chaos. And somehow, her heart moved toward the dangerous one. Luca looked at her carefully. He wouldn't force her. That realization hurt unexpectedly. Victor's voice softened outside. You know who these people are. Elena looked toward Luca. He said nothing, no manipulation, no threats, just waiting. And somehow that made the decision even harder. Finally, Elena walked slowly toward the door. Luca's jaw tightened slightly. She reached the handle, paused, then turned back toward him. Their eyes locked, everything unspoken between them crashing silently into that moment. And softly, almost painfully, Elena whispered, I'm not leaving him. Outside the cabin, Victor Hale closed his eyes in frustration, while inside, Luca DeSantis realized he had already fallen far deeper than he intended. The cabin became impossibly silent after Elena's words. I'm not leaving him. Outside, federal agents shifted uneasily beneath cold rain, while Victor Hale stood frozen on the porch staring through the cabin doorway. At Luca. At Elena. At the disaster unfolding between them. The fire crackled softly behind her. Warm light danced across Elena's face, while the oversized black hoodie swallowed her smaller frame. And suddenly Victor understood something terrifying. She looked safe with Luca. Not trapped. Not manipulated. Safe. That should have been impossible. Victor stepped slowly inside the cabin while 2 agents remained outside near the vehicles. Rainwater dripped from his coat onto the wooden floor. Elena, he said quietly, we need to talk. Luca stayed near the fireplace, posture calm but dangerous. Victor noticed immediately. The Mafia hare's hand rested casually near his concealed weapon. Protective position. Interesting. Elena stays where I can see her, Luca said coldly. Victor looked toward him. You don't get to make demands. I do in my house. You're harboring a federal witness. She's not property. That answer surprised both Elena and Victor slightly. Victor removed his gloves slowly. You have no idea what you're involved in. Luca's eyes darkened. Then enlighten me. The tension inside the cabin thickened immediately. Elena already hated where this conversation was going. Victor looked exhausted. Older somehow. Years older than she remembered. Like the weight of protecting secrets had finally begun crushing him too. He looked toward Elena softly. I tried to keep you out of this. You brought me to the gala. Yes. And people almost killed me. Victor closed his eyes briefly. That wasn't supposed to happen. Elena laughed bitterly. Wonderful strategy. Luca watched Victor carefully now. predatory focus. He sensed lies. Not direct lies. The worst kind. Half-truths. What aren't you saying? Luca asked quietly. Victor looked toward the fire. Then finally answered. Elena isn't just a survivor. The room went still. Victor continued carefully. She's evidence. Elena's stomach dropped instantly. No. No. Victor, she whispered. But he kept going. The trafficking network she escaped from connected politicians, judges, businessmen. His eyes shifted toward Luca. And organized crime families. Luca stayed silent. Dangerously silent. Victor lowered his voice. Elena saw things. Memory flashed violently through Elena's mind. Locked rooms. Auction numbers. Private meetings. Faces. God, so many faces. She was never just hiding, Victor continued. She was being preserved. That word hit her like a slap. Preserved. Not protected. Preserved. Like evidence locked inside a vault. Elena stared at him in disbelief. You used me. Victor's face tightened immediately. No. You hid me because I could destroy powerful people. I hid you because they would have killed you. And because someday I'd become useful. Silence answered. That silence hurt more than truth itself. Luca finally spoke. How many families were connected? Victor hesitated. Wrong move. Luca noticed instantly. How many? Victor met his eyes slowly. Enough to start a war. Elena backed away slightly toward the windows. Her breathing became uneven. All these years she believed Victor protected her because he cared. Maybe he did. But not completely. Never completely. She had been a witness. An insurance policy. A weapon waiting for the right moment. You promised me I'd never have to testify. Elena whispered. Victor looked genuinely pained. I lied. The room shattered emotionally after that. Elena laughed softly. Broken sound. Of course you did. Elena. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Not weakness. Rage, humiliation. I spent my entire life running from men who wanted to own me. Her eyes lifted toward Victor now. Buyers. Then toward Luca. Criminals. Then back toward Victor again. And now prosecutors. Victor stepped forward carefully. You don't understand what's at stake. Elena's voice cracked sharply. I was 13. The cabin fell silent again. Even Luca looked shaken by the raw pain in her voice. You all keep talking about empires and investigations and leverage. Elena continued. But none of you ever ask what it cost me to survive. Victor's expression collapsed slightly. Because there was no defense against that. None. Luca moved quietly toward Elena, not touching her. Just close enough to anchor her if she fell apart. Victor noticed immediately. And somehow, that hurt worse than Elena choosing Luca earlier. Because Luca looked at her like a person. Not evidence. Victor sighed heavily. There's more. Nobody wanted more. But he continued anyway. The network hunting Elena rebuilt itself. Luca's eyes hardened instantly. Victor looked toward him carefully. And someone inside the DeSantis organization recently reopened transport routes. Luca went still. Elena's testimony could destroy them permanently. Elena stared blankly toward the lake outside. She suddenly felt exhausted beyond words. Everyone wanted something from her. Always. Survival never ended. It just changed clothes. Victor stepped closer again. You need federal protection. Elena laughed bitterly. From who? The federal government that buried me for years. What kept you alive? You kept me hidden. Victor's jaw tightened. Same difference. No. Luca said quietly from beside her. It isn't. Victor looked toward him coldly. You don't get moral authority here. No. Luca admitted calmly. But neither do you. The air between the two men turned dangerous instantly. Elena suddenly couldn't breathe inside the cabin anymore. Too many expectations. Too many truths. Too many men deciding her future. She stepped backward slowly. Neither noticed at first. Victor kept talking. We can move her tonight. No. Luca replied immediately. You don't have a choice. Try me? Wrong focus. Both of them, because neither realized something important. Elena was done being handled. Done being protected. Done being used. Quietly, she slipped toward the back hallway. Then upstairs. Neither man followed. Good. Perfect. 5 minutes later, a motorcycle engine roared alive outside behind the cabin. Luca turned instantly. Too late. Headlights tore through the tree line as Elena sped away down the forest road alone. Lena! Victor shouted. Luca was already moving. He burst outside into freezing rain, while the motorcycle disappeared deeper into darkness. For one terrifying second, panic hit him. Real panic. Because Blackridge wasn't the only danger anymore. Everyone was hunting her now. Federal agencies, trafficking networks, his own family, and she was alone. Luca grabbed his phone immediately. Matteo. You found her. She ran. That sounds bad. Track the motorcycle routes northbound now. You think she's heading back to the city? Luca's expression darkened. No. He already understood Elena too well now. When survivors got overwhelmed, they disappeared. Irama by sunrise, Blackridge descended into chaos. The DeSantis family fractured publicly for the first time in decades. Safe houses burned overnight. Supply routes vanished. 2 captains switched alliances. 3 disappeared entirely. Everyone sensed weakness at the top. And in organized crime, weakness attracted predators. Inside Marco DeSantis's private estate, tension suffocated the air while family leadership argued across a massive dining table. He betrayed us? One captain snapped. He chose the girl over blood. Another added. Marco listened silently. Expression unreadable. Then Sophia entered the room. Every voice stopped immediately. Elegant black dress. Cold eyes. Perfect posture. Still dangerous enough to terrify grown criminals. Well, Marco asked quietly. Sophia sat slowly beside him. He's looking for her. Of course he is. He won't stop. Marco's fingers tapped lightly against the table once. Then twice. Thinking. Calculating. Finally, then Luca's no longer thinking like an hare. Silence swallowed the room. Because everyone understood what that meant. Marco looked toward his soldiers calmly. Find my son. Nobody moved. Then Marco finished softly. And if he resists. Even Sophia looked tense now. Kill him. And meanwhile, Elena sat alone inside a filthy roadside motel nearly 200 miles south of Blackridge. Fake name. Cash payment, curtains closed. Classic survival routine. She sat on the edge of the bed staring blankly at the television. News reports filled every channel. Mafia violence escalating. Federal investigations widening. Luca's name everywhere. And somehow, every report felt partially her fault. Elena rubbed exhausted hands over her face. She should have left long ago. The moment she escaped the first kidnapping. The moment emotions complicated things. Because people near her died. That was the pattern. Always. Yet despite everything, her thoughts kept returning to Luca. The way he looked at her after the warehouse shooting. The fireplace conversations. His voice when he said, "If you leave now, I'll still come looking for you." Damn him. A soft knock echoed suddenly against the motel door. Elena froze instantly. No one knew she was here. Another knock. 3 taps. Not aggressive. Controlled. Elena quietly pulled the handgun from beneath the pillow and approached carefully. Who is it? Silence. Then a familiar female voice answered softly. Someone who understands bad decisions. Elena's blood turned cold. Sophia. Slowly, Elena opened the door slightly. Sophia stood alone in the hallway wearing dark sunglasses and a long black coat. Perfectly composed as always. You tracked me. You're easier to find emotionally than digitally. Elena almost slammed the door shut. Sophia stopped it calmly. I'm not here to hurt you. That would make you the only person this week. Sophia actually smiled faintly. Then her expression softened unexpectedly. You disappeared. I noticed. You broke him. Elena blinked. What? Sophia removed her sunglasses slowly. For the first time since meeting her, she looked tired. Really tired. He's tearing apart the city looking for you. Something painful twisted inside Elena's chest. No. No attachment. Attachment gets people killed. Sophia studied her carefully. You love him? Well, Elena answered instantly. No. Lie. Sophia saw it immediately. And somehow, instead of anger, she looked sad. You should have run farther. Elena frowned. What does that mean? Sophia hesitated briefly. Then quietly, Marco ordered Luca's death this morning. The motel room suddenly felt ice cold. Elena stared at her. No. He believes Luca compromised the family. Because of me? Wes. The honesty hurt. Sophia stepped closer slightly. If Luca finds you first, he dies trying to protect you. Elena's eyes filled instantly. Not fear, guilt, God, Sophia continued softly. And if the network finds you first? She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Elena already knew. Sophia placed a small burner phone onto the motel table. One call? She said quietly. That's all he'll get before the family tracks him. Then she turned toward the door. Elena. She looked back once. If you care about him at all. Pain flickered across Sophia's face briefly. Don't let him come for you. The door closed softly behind her. And Elena suddenly realized something horrifying. She wasn't the only woman in Blackridge falling apart because of Luca DeSantis. 3 hours later, Luca stood inside a blood-stained warehouse interrogation room gripping a terrified informant against the wall. Where is she? I swear I don't know. Luca slammed him harder. The man cried out. Matteo watched nearby carefully. Because Luca was spiraling now. Violent. Obsessive. Desperate. Nothing like his usual controlled self. The informant shook violently. We only heard rumors. What rumors? That the network found her first. The room froze instantly. Luca released the man slowly. Cold silence. What did you say? The informant swallowed hard. One of the old trafficking leaders returned to Blackridge. Every muscle inside Luca's body tightened. No. No, no, no. The man continued shakily. They grabbed a woman matching Elena's description near the interstate this morning. For one terrifying second, Luca stopped breathing. Matteo immediately understood. Boss. But Luca was already moving. Already reaching for weapons. Already becoming something far more dangerous than a mafia hair. Because now this wasn't about family politics anymore. This was personal. Very personal. Luca grabbed his coat while storm clouds gathered over Blackridge once again. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered instantly. Silence greeted him first. Then, Elena's terrified voice whispered through static. Luca. His heart stopped. Then a male voice calmly replaced hers. If you want her back. A chair scraped somewhere in the background. Elena crying softly. Come alone. The line disconnected. And suddenly, Blackridge was heading toward war. The rain over Blackridge looked black from the sky. Heavy storm clouds swallowed the city, while lightning flashed over the harbor district like the heavens themselves were warning people to run. Nobody did. Because violence in Blackridge wasn't unusual. It was tradition. And tonight, the city belonged to Luca DeSantis. The warehouse interrogation room stood silent after the phone call ended. Matteo stared at Luca carefully. The air around him had changed. No anger. No shouting. Just terrifying calm. The kind that usually came before mass casualties. Trace the number, Luca ordered quietly. Already trying. Pull every loyal crew we still have. Matteo hesitated slightly. Luca. Luca slowly looked toward him. Wrong move. Because Matteo saw it immediately. That coldness in Luca's eyes wasn't strategy anymore. It was obsession. She's alive, Matteo said, carefully. For now, we should plan this properly. Luca grabbed his coat and weapons from the table. I am planning. That's not planning. That's revenge. Luca loaded a handgun calmly. No, he said softly. It's retrieval. Farther across the city, Elena sat tied to the steel chair inside an abandoned shipping facility near the docks. Cold concrete. Rusty metal walls. Saltwater smell drifting through broken windows. The place looked horrifyingly similar to the rooms from her childhood. That was intentional. Every detail was intentional. The man standing across from her understood trauma very well. Damien Voss, one of the original architects of the trafficking network. Silver hair, expensive gray suit, gentle voice. The kind of monster who looked trustworthy. That was always the trick. Men like Damien didn't scream. They smiled. Elena's wrists burned against the restraints while Damien calmly poured tea nearby like they were old friends reconnecting. You disappeared beautifully, he said softly. Elena stared murderously at him. You should have stayed dead. Damien smiled faintly. And yet here we are. He handed her a teacup. She knocked it onto the floor immediately. The porcelain shattered loudly. Damien sighed. You always were difficult. You trafficked children. And governments funded wars. Damien replied calmly. Humanity is complicated. Elena's stomach twisted violently. Same calm voice. Same manipulation. Nothing changed. Damien walked slowly around her chair. You know why you survived all those years ago? Elena stayed silent. Because you were observant. His voice lowered slightly. You remembered faces. Fear crawled beneath Elena's skin. No, he couldn't know. You saw politicians, judges, investors. Damien leaned closer. And now everyone's terrified you might talk. Elena forced herself not to shake. Years hiding, running, changing identities. And somehow the nightmare still caught her. You should have killed me back then, she whispered. Damien's expression softened almost sympathetically. No. He smiled faintly. You were always valuable. The warehouse doors thundered open suddenly downstairs. Gunfire erupted immediately. Damien sighed. Hey! Automatic weapons roared through the building. Men screamed. Bodies hit concrete. Elena's pulse exploded instantly. Luca. Of course. Damien looked almost amused. He came faster than expected. Another explosion shook the warehouse. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then came the sound Elena recognized immediately. Luca's gunfire. Precise. Controlled. Terrifyingly efficient. Damien adjusted his cuffs calmly. You know, he said conversationally, your Mafia hair has become quite inconvenient. Elena's voice cracked sharply. You touch him and I swear. Damien smiled wider. There she is. He moved closer slowly. You love him? No. Again. Damien chuckled softly. Trauma creates fascinating attachments. Elena lunged forward violently despite the restraints. The chair crashed sideways. Damien stepped back laughing lightly. Then, the upper warehouse door exploded inward. Luca entered like death itself. Black coat soaked from rain. Gun in one hand. Blood on his knuckles. 3 armed men rushed him immediately. Luca shot the first through the throat. Second through the chest. Third directly between the eyes. No hesitation. No wasted movement. Elena's breath caught instantly. He looked terrifying, beautifully terrifying. Damien slowly applauded. Well, he murmured, no, I understand the fascination. Luca's eyes locked onto Elena first. Always her first. Relief flashed across his face for half a second before violence returned immediately. You hurt her. Damien smiled calmly. Emotion. He observed softly. Your father was right about you. That name changed everything. Luca's expression darkened instantly. You know my father. Very well. Elena watched realization spread across Luca's face slowly. Damien continued. Marco DeSantis financed several expansion routes years ago. The room felt colder suddenly. He was very practical about children. Damien added casually. Luca looked physically sick, then furious. You're lying. Am I? Damien tilted his head slightly. You should ask him how many girls pass through DeSantis ports. Elena watched Luca carefully now. Pain. Real pain. Because part of him already believed it. Gunfire exploded downstairs again. More enemies entering. The city was collapsing into war around them. Damien sighed lightly. This reunion's becoming noisy. Then suddenly he pulled a pistol and aimed directly at Elena's head. Everything froze. Luca's voice dropped dangerously low. Don't. Damien smiled. Interesting choice of word. His finger tightened slightly on the trigger. Because I remember your father saying the exact same thing once. Elena's blood turned cold. No. No. Damien watched Luca carefully. Tell me something, Hare. His smile widened faintly. How much blood can love survive? Then the warehouse lights died instantly. Complete darkness swallowed the room. Gunfire erupted everywhere. Chaos. Screaming. Elena dropped sideways with the chair as bullets tore through metal walls nearby. Somewhere inside the darkness, Luca killed people. She heard it. Measured gunshots. Bodies falling. Men screaming briefly before silence. Then suddenly, strong hands grabbed her chair. Elena. Luca. Relief nearly broke her. He cut the restraints quickly while more gunfire echoed downstairs. Can you walk? Wes? You better. He pulled her up anyway. Their bodies crashed together briefly in the darkness. Both breathing hard. Both alive. Luca touched her face quickly like confirming she was real. You left. Elena swallowed shakily. You found me. Always. That word hit harder than the gunfire. Then warehouse floodlights exploded back on suddenly. Damien stood across the upper platform smiling faintly while dozens of armed men flooded the lower floor below. Trapped. Perfectly trapped. Luca pulled Elena behind him immediately. Damien sighed dramatically. I was hoping for a cleaner reunion. He raised his weapon slightly. You know the problem with love, Luca. Elena grabbed Luca's arm tightly. Damien's eyes glittered coldly. It gives enemies something to aim at. Then all hell broke loose. The docks erupted into open warfare. Explosions shook cargo containers. Automatic weapons flashed through rain and smoke. Burning vehicles lit the harbor orange against the storm. And at the center of it all, Luca DeSantis tore through enemies like a man possessed. Elena stayed close behind overturned shipping crates, while Luca exchanged gunfire with Damien's soldiers. She'd seen violence before. Too much violence, but this felt different. Luca wasn't fighting strategically anymore. He was fighting emotionally. For her, that realization terrified her almost as much as it moved her. Matteo's convoy crashed through the dock entrance suddenly. Reinforcements. DeSantis soldiers flooded the harbor firing heavily. The battle intensified instantly. Elena spotted Damien retreating toward a yacht farther down the pier. He's leaving. Luca turned immediately. Their eyes met. Then both started running. Together. Bullets ripped through the storm around them while containers exploded nearby. The pier shook beneath their feet. Damien reached the yacht ramp. Then Luca tackled him violently from behind. Both men crashed hard against the rain-soaked deck. Elena reached them seconds later, just as Damien pulled a hidden knife. Luca caught the wrist instantly. The blade stopped inches from his throat. Both men struggled brutally across the deck. Rain pouring. Blood mixing with seawater. Damien laughed breathlessly. She'll destroy you. Luca slammed his head against the deck. She already did? Then, he punched Damien again. And again, years of rage exploding through every strike. Elena grabbed Luca desperately. Luca! He barely heard her. Didn't stop. Didn't care. Because this man represented everything. The trafficking, the lies, the children, the empire his father helped build. Luca finally raised the knife toward Damien's throat. Elena, a gunshot cracked across the harbor. Luca turned instinctively. Too late. Marco DeSantis stood at the end of the pier, surrounded by armed soldiers, and he was aiming directly at Elena. Time slowed instantly. Luca moved without thinking. The gunshot thundered through the storm. Pain exploded through Luca's chest. Elena screamed as his body jerked violently before collapsing against the rain-soaked deck. No. No, 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 no. Marco lowered the smoking pistol calmly. The harbor fell eerily silent around him. Even the gunfire seemed distant suddenly. Luca coughed blood against the yacht deck, while Elena dropped beside him shaking violently. Luca. His breathing sounded wrong instantly. Too wet. Too shallow. Marco approached slowly through the rain, expression emotionless, like he hadn't just shot his own son. Love, Marco said coldly, makes monsters weak talk. Elena pressed trembling hands against Luca's chest wound desperately. Blood soaked through her fingers instantly. Too much blood. God, too much. Luca grabbed her wrist weakly. His eyes struggled to focus on her through the rain. Elena, don't you dare. His lips twitched faintly. Almost a smile. Then Marco raised the gun again, this time aiming directly at Elena. And Luca, still bleeding out, still dying, tried to pull himself in front of her anyway. Rain crashed against the harbor hard enough to blur the world into silver chaos. Elena barely heard the screaming around her, the gunfire, the explosions, the terrified shouting from DeSantis soldiers. None of it mattered anymore, because Luca was bleeding out in her arms. No. Her voice broke violently. No, no, no. Stay with me. The blood soaked through her hands while Luca struggled weakly for breath against the rain-soaked yacht deck. Marco DeSantis stood several feet away holding the smoking pistol with terrifying calm, like he hadn't just shot his own son. Lena. Luca's voice barely existed now. Weak, wet, dying. She pressed harder against the wound desperately. You're fine. Huge lie. Look at me. She whispered shakily. Look at me, Luca. His eyes focused on her slowly, still trying to protect her even now. Still pulling himself between her and the gun pointed at her chest. Marco lowered the weapon slightly. Cold disappointment crossed his face. This is why emotion destroys men. Elena looked up at him, and something inside her finally snapped. Not fear. Not survival instinct. Rage. Pure. Ancient. Years of terror and helplessness collapsing into fury so violent it nearly blinded her. You shot your own son. Marco's expression remained unreadable. I shot weakness. The words hit harder than the bullet. Luca coughed violently beside her. More blood. God. Too much blood. Matteo's convoy finally broke through the lower dock barricades behind them. DeSantis soldiers flooded the harbor from every direction. Marco glanced toward the approaching reinforcements calmly. Then back toward Elena. You should leave before this becomes uglier. Elena stared at him in disbelief. Uglier? His son was dying at his feet. Marco holstered the pistol slowly. You were always going to ruin him. Then he walked away into the rain while his remaining soldiers covered the retreat. Matteo reached the yacht seconds later. His face went pale instantly. Oh God! Help him! Elena screamed. Matteo dropped beside Luca immediately. Pressure on the wound. Emergency call. Orders shouted into radios. Everything became frantic chaos. But Elena noticed something terrifying. Matteo looked scared. Really scared. And men like Matteo never looked scared. 3 days later, Blackridge burned. Literally. Safe houses exploded overnight. Money laundering operations vanished. 3 DeSantis captains were found dead. 2 more disappeared. Every criminal organization in the city sensed weakness now, and predators circled dying empires fast. Inside a dark motel room on the outskirts of the city, Elena sat silently near the television while news reports filled the screen. Ongoing violence connected to the DeSantis organization. Oof. Multiple fires reported overnight. Unconfirmed reports suggest Luca DeSantis may be dead following the harbor attack. The word replayed endlessly in her head. Dead. Matteo refused to answer calls. Victor vanished completely. The city whispered rumors constantly. Some said Luca died on the yacht. Others claimed Marco buried the body secretly. Nobody knew truth anymore. And Elena was unraveling. She hadn't slept properly in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca collapsing into her arms again. He came for her anyway. Despite everything. Despite knowing loving her would destroy him. Tears filled her eyes again. She hated crying, hated weakness. But grief ignored pride completely. The motel television continued reporting destruction across Blackridge. Then suddenly, a familiar face appeared on screen. Marco DeSantis. Cold, untouched, alive. He stood outside one of the family casinos speaking calmly to reporters, while police lights flashed nearby. Elena Vale is responsible for recent instability. Marco said smoothly. My son made unfortunate emotional decisions. Elena's hands clenched violently. Emotional decisions. Like loving someone was a disease. The rage returned instantly. Hotter this time. Sharper. No more running. No more hiding. Marco destroyed everything. The network. The trafficking. Luca. Enough. Elena slowly stood. And for the first time since escaping years ago, she stopped thinking like prey. That same night, Sofia Moretti sat alone inside her penthouse apartment overlooking downtown Blackridge. Wine untouched. Jazz music playing softly. But her hands trembled slightly around the crystal glass anyway. Luca might be dead. The thought hollowed her out more than expected. She spent years convincing herself their arranged future made sense. Power, stability, control. That was enough. Then Elena appeared. And suddenly Sofia saw something she never had with Luca. Real love. Messy, dangerous, self-destructive. But real. A soft knock echoed against the apartment door. Sofia reached automatically for the pistol beneath the couch cushion. Ooh. Elena. Interesting. Sofia opened the door slowly. Elena entered wearing dark clothes and a hood pulled low over her face. No fear anymore. That immediately unsettled Sofia. Traumatized people were predictable. Broken people were not. You came alone? Sofia asked quietly. Yes. Bulled. I'm tired. Sofia studied her carefully. You heard the rumors. Elena. Tell me the truth. Silence. That was answer enough. Pain crossed Elena's face instantly. Tiny crack. Then gone again. Sofia looked away toward the skyline. He survived surgery. Elena stopped breathing. What? Barely? Hope slammed into her chest so hard it physically hurt. Alive. Luca was alive. Sofia continued quietly. Matteo moved him somewhere hidden. Where? I don't know. Lie. Elena noticed immediately. But she also noticed something else. Sofia looked exhausted. Emotionally wrecked. Just hiding it better. You still love him. Elena said softly. Sofia laughed bitterly. That's the tragedy, isn't it? Silence stretched between them. Not enemies anymore. Just two women emotionally destroyed by the same man. Sofia finally poured another glass of wine. You should leave Blackridge. New? Sofia looked surprised. Elena, Marco will never stop hunting you. Good. That answer changed the room temperature instantly. Sofia stared at her carefully now. And suddenly realized something terrifying. Elena wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry. Very angry. What are you planning? What? Elena's eyes hardened. The same thing Luca would. Varare across the city, hidden beneath an abandoned church, converted into a secret medical safe house. Luca DeSantis slowly woke beneath dim candlelight. Pain hit instantly. Chest wound. Heavy bandages. Breathing difficult. Alive. Unfortunately. Matteo nearly collapsed with relief beside the bed. Jesus Christ. Luca tried sitting up immediately. Bad idea. Pain exploded through his ribs. Elena. Still alive. We don't know. Luca's jaw tightened instantly. How long? 3 days. 3 days. Too long, way too long. Luca forced himself upright despite the pain. Matteo grabbed him immediately. You were shot in the chest. And she's alone. Luca? She thinks I'm dead? Matteo stopped. Because yes. That sounded exactly like something Elena would believe. Luca grabbed the edge of the bed, breathing hard. Then quietly, get me dressed. Absolutely not. Matteo. Nope. Nope. Luca looked toward him slowly. That terrifying calm returning again. I'm ending this war. About morning, Blackridge descended into open chaos. Someone began targeting Marco DeSantis' operations surgically. Not random attacks. Calculated destruction. Money routes exposed anonymously to federal agents. Drug warehouses burned. Corrupt judges leaked online. Encrypted ledgers released publicly. And every leak somehow connected back to the trafficking network. Marco realized the truth immediately. Elena. Inside the DeSantis estate, fury radiated through the mansion while captains screamed over phones and news reports exploded across television screens. She's destroying us. Marco remained frighteningly calm. Find her. One soldier hesitated carefully. Sir, some crews are refusing orders. Marco looked up slowly. Why? The man swallowed hard. They think Luca's alive. Interesting. Very interesting. Marco dismissed everyone else from the room quietly. Then Sophia entered moments later. She closed the office doors behind her. You're losing control, she said softly. Marco poured whiskey calmly. My son infected the family with emotion. No. Sophia corrected quietly. You did? Marco's eyes lifted toward her. Sophia stepped closer. You taught Luca violence his entire life. Her voice sharpened slightly. But somehow you're shocked he finally turned it against you. For the first time in years, Marco looked uncertain. Just for a second. Then gone again. Sophia noticed anyway. Good. You always feared one thing, she continued softly. Love? Marco's expression darkened instantly. Love makes men weak. Sophia smiled sadly. No. She looked out toward the storm-covered city. It makes them dangerous. Later that night, Elena stood alone inside a hidden storage garage loading ammunition into stolen weapons. The reflection staring back from the cracked mirror barely looked familiar anymore. Dark clothes, hard eyes, bruised knuckles. No fear left. Just purpose. A vehicle engine echoed behind her suddenly. Elena spun instantly with the gun raised, then froze. Luca stood beside the garage entrance, pale and wounded beneath a black coat. Alive. Her breath caught violently. For several seconds neither moved. Neither spoke. Rain dripped softly outside. Then Elena crossed the distance between them fast enough to nearly knock him backward. She kissed him hard. Furious kiss. Relieved kiss. The kind born from grief, and almost losing someone forever. Luca grabbed her immediately despite the pain tearing through his chest. You're alive, she whispered shakily against his mouth. You're terrifying, he breathed back. Tears filled her eyes instantly. I thought you died. I tried not to. That almost made her laugh through the tears. Almost. Luca touched her face gently. Then his expression darkened slightly. You've been busy. Your father deserves worse. Luca glanced toward the stolen weapons nearby. Planning a revolution. Considering murder. Fair. Silence settled between them briefly. Heavy. Emotional. Then Luca looked directly into her eyes. And softly, almost painfully honest, he said, I'm done protecting the empire. Elena's chest tightened. Luca stepped closer despite the injury. I spent my entire life becoming the perfect heir, his voice lowered. But I'd rather burn the whole kingdom down. His forehead rested lightly against hers. Then lose you again. And for the first time in years. Elena finally stopped running. If someone destroyed your entire world, then disappeared without saying goodbye, would you spend months trying to forget them? Or spend every day hoping they'd come back? And tell me honestly, would you survive loving someone who arrived in your life as a mistake? Rain fell softly over the northern coastline, while waves crashed against black rocks beneath gray skies. 6 months had passed since the fall of the DeSantis empire. 6 months since Blackridge burned. 6 months since Elena vanished. And somehow, Luca DeSantis still checked the door every time it opened. Pathetic. He knew that. Did it anyway. The small coal town of Ashwick sat hundreds of miles away from Blackridge, hidden between forests and ocean cliffs where nobody asked questions and everyone minded their business. Perfect place for a man trying to disappear. Luca now owned a tiny auto repair garage near the harbor. No luxury penthouses. No armed convoys. No bodyguards. Just cold mornings, engine grease, and silence. A normal life. Or at least the closest thing he could manage. The locals knew him as Luca Rossi. Quiet mechanic. Keeps to himself. Looks like he could kill someone with a wrench. Accurate enough. The garage radio played softly while rain tapped against the metal roof overhead. Luca worked beneath the hood of an old truck with sleeves rolled to his elbows, grease-staining scarred hands once worth millions in criminal negotiations. Now they repaired engines. Funny how life changed. The bell above the garage office door rang softly. Shops closed. Luca muttered automatically without looking up. Silence answered. Then, you were significantly more romantic as a kidnapper. Everything inside Luca stopped. The wrench slipped from his hand and hit concrete loudly. No. Slowly, very slowly, he looked up. Elena stood near the garage entrance wearing a dark coat soaked lightly from rain. Older somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. The haunted edge in her eyes remained, but softer now. Freer. And somehow she still looked devastating enough to ruin him instantly. For several long seconds neither moved. Neither breathed properly. The world narrowed painfully around them. Luca finally found his voice. You're alive. Elena smiled faintly. Strong opening. He crossed the garage before thinking. Fast enough to nearly crash into her. His hands grabbed her face immediately, like confirming she was real. Warm. Alive. Actually here. You disappeared. Her expression softened sadly. I know. You left. Wes. You left me a 3-word note. It was a very emotional note. Luca stared at her in disbelief, then suddenly laughed once, short, broken, relieved. God, he missed her. Too much. Way too much. Elena's eyes filled slightly watching him laugh. Because for months she feared he'd hate her. Instead, he looked like a man seeing sunlight after surviving winter. That somehow hurt worse. Luca stepped back slightly. Still staring. Still making sure she existed. Why are you here? Elena looked toward the rain outside briefly. Then quietly. Because I finished it. Something sharp moved through Luca instantly. The network. She nodded slowly. Victor used my testimony. Pain flickered across her face briefly, but this time it was my choice. Luca stayed silent. Elena continued softly. More arrests. More indictments. More names exposed. Her eyes met his again. It's over. For the first time in years, the words sounded real. Over. No more hiding. No more fake identities. No more running from shadows every time a car slowed beside her. Luca exhaled slowly. Relief hit harder than expected. Then his expression darkened slightly. You still should have told me. Elena looked down briefly. I wanted to. Then why didn't you? Because she was terrified. Terrified that after the war ended, they'd realize they only loved each other inside chaos. Some people confuse survival with connection. Elena feared becoming one of them. She stepped farther into the garage slowly. I spent my whole life being controlled by powerful men. Her voice lowered. Buyers, politicians, criminals, prosecutors. Rain echoed softly outside. And after Marco died, she swallowed carefully. I needed one decision that belonged entirely to me. Luca watched her quietly. No anger, just understanding. Always dangerous when he understood her. Elena laughed softly at herself. I know leaving was cruel. Wes, you could pretend to disagree. No. That almost made her smile, almost. Silence settled between them again. Different silence now. Not tension. History. The kind only shared trauma creates. Luca leaned against the workbench slowly. You know what the worst part was? Elena looked at him carefully. What? I kept seeing you everywhere. Her chest tightened instantly. Luca continued quietly. Coffee shops. A faint smile touched his mouth. Rainstorms. Elena's eyes watered slightly. Woman wearing oversized hoodies. Okay. That one nearly broke her. Luca looked down briefly before continuing. And every morning. His voice lowered softer. I still reached across the bed expecting you there. The confession hit like a gunshot. Because she did the same thing. Every single morning. Elena stepped closer. So why didn't you come find me? Luca's eyes lifted slowly toward hers. Because you left. Simple answer. Painfully respectful answer. He could have tracked her easily. Probably did track her for a while. But he stopped. Because somewhere along the way, Luca finally learned the difference between protecting someone and possessing them. That realization alone made Elena love him harder. Dangerous. Still dangerous. She looked around the garage quietly. You really became a mechanic. I fix things now. That feels symbolic. It's cheaper than therapy. Elena laughed through tears finally. God, she missed this. Missed him. Missed breathing without fear around another human being. Luca studied her carefully again. Still searching for damage. Still making sure she survived whatever happened after leaving. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. You cut your hair. Elena touched the shorter, dark waves absent-mindedly. You noticed immediately. I notice everything. That still sounds exhausting. It is. The rain outside intensified softly. Ocean wind rattled the garage windows. And suddenly neither of them wanted distance anymore. Not after 6 months. Not after almost losing everything. Luca stepped closer again. Close enough to feel her breathing. Close enough to remember exactly how she fit against him. Elena's pulse betrayed her instantly. He noticed. Of course he did. You're nervous. Luca murmured softly. You make eye contact aggressively. His mouth twitched faintly. There she is. She looked up at him carefully. No Mafia empire now. No violence surrounding them. No survival adrenaline confusing emotions. Just 2 damaged people standing in a tiny garage by the ocean. Real. Terrifyingly real. Elena's voice softened. So what are we now? Luca stared at her for several seconds. Then finally answered honestly. I have absolutely no idea. That made her smile fully for the first time since Blackridge. Beautiful smile. Free smile. The kind nobody had managed to steal from her permanently after all. She stepped into him slowly until his hands settled naturally against her waist. Warm. Safe. Home. Maybe. Elena whispered softly. We're just 2 people who survived each other. Luca looked at her like she'd just said something sacred. Then quietly. You know what's funny? You were the worst kidnapping mistake in history. Elena laughed softly. And you were the most emotionally unstable Mafia boss alive. Former Mafia boss. Still dramatic though. Fair. Rain thundered against the garage roof while Luca kissed her slowly. Not desperate this time. Not survival. Not grief. Just love. Messy. Damaged. Hard-earned love. The kind built from gunfire and trauma and impossible choices. And somehow, against every logical outcome, they survived it. Outside, the storm continued over the coastline. But inside the little garage near the sea, for the first time in both their lives, Neither of them was running anymore. If someone destroyed your entire world, then disappeared without saying goodbye, would you spend months trying to forget them? Or spend every day hoping they'd come back? And tell me honestly, would you survive loving someone who arrived in your life as a mistake? Rain fell softly over the northern coastline, while waves crashed against black rocks beneath gray skies. 6 months had passed since the fall of the DeSantis empire. 6 months since Blackridge burned. 6 months since Elena vanished. And somehow, Luca DeSantis still checked the door every time it opened. Pathetic. He knew that. Did it anyway. The small coastal town of Ashwick sat hundreds of miles away from Blackridge, hidden between forests and ocean cliffs, where nobody asked questions and everyone minded their business. Perfect place for a man trying to disappear. Luca now owned a tiny auto repair garage near the harbor. No luxury penthouses. No armed convoys. No bodyguards. Just cold mornings, engine grease, and silence. A normal life. Or at least the closest thing he could manage. The locals knew him as Luca Rossi. Quiet mechanic. Keeps to himself. Looks like he could kill someone with a wrench. Accurate enough. The garage radio played softly while rain tapped against the metal roof overhead. Luca worked beneath the hood of an old truck with sleeves rolled to his elbows, grease-staining scarred hands once worth millions in criminal negotiations. Now they repaired engines. Funny how life changed. The bell above the garage office door rang softly. Shop's closed. Luca muttered automatically without looking up. Silence answered. Then, you were significantly more romantic as a kidnapper. Everything inside Luca stopped. The wrench slipped from his hand and hit concrete loudly. No. Slowly, very slowly, he looked up. Elena stood near the garage entrance wearing a dark coat soaked lightly from rain. Older somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. The haunted edge in her eyes remained, but softer now. Freer. And somehow she still looked devastating enough to ruin him instantly. For several long seconds neither moved. Neither breathed properly. The world narrowed painfully around them. Luca finally found his voice. You're alive. Elena smiled faintly. Strong opening. He crossed the garage before thinking. Fast enough to nearly crash into her. His hands grabbed her face immediately like confirming she was real. Warm. Alive. Actually here. You disappeared. Her expression softened sadly. I know. You left. Wes. You left me a 3-word note. It was a very emotional note. Luca stared at her in disbelief, then suddenly laughed once. Short. Broken. Relieved. God. He missed her. Too much. Way too much. Elena's eyes filled slightly watching him laugh. Because for months she feared he'd hate her. Instead, he looked like a man seeing sunlight after surviving winter. That somehow hurt worse. Luca stepped back slightly. Still staring. Still making sure she existed. Why are you here? Elena looked toward the rain outside briefly. Then quietly, because I finished it. Something sharp moved through Luca instantly. The network. She nodded slowly. Victor used my testimony. Pain flickered across her face briefly, but this time it was my choice. Luca stayed silent. Elena continued softly, more arrests. More indictments. More names exposed. Her eyes met his again. It's over. For the first time in years, the words sounded real. Over. No more hiding. No more fake identities. No more running from shadows every time a car slowed beside her. Luca exhaled slowly. Relief hit harder than expected. Then his expression darkened slightly. You still should have told me. Elena looked down briefly. I wanted to? Then why didn't you? Because she was terrified. Terrified that after the war ended, they'd realize they only loved each other inside chaos. Some people confuse survival with connection. Elena feared becoming one of them. She stepped farther into the garage slowly. I spent my whole life being controlled by powerful men. Her voice lowered. Buyers. Politicians, criminals, prosecutors. A rain echoed softly outside, and after Marco died, she swallowed carefully. I needed one decision that belonged entirely to me. Luca watched her quietly. No anger, just understanding. Always dangerous when he understood her. Elena laughed softly at herself. I know leaving was cruel. Wes. You could pretend to disagree. No bow. That almost made her smile. Almost. Silence settled between them again. Different silence now. Not tension. History, the kind only shared trauma creates. Luca leaned against the workbench slowly. You know what the worst part was? Elena looked at him carefully. What? I kept seeing you everywhere. Her chest tightened instantly. Luca continued quietly. Coffee shops. A faint smile touched his mouth. Rainstorms. Elena's eyes watered slightly. Woman wearing oversized hoodies. Okay, that one nearly broke her. Luca looked down briefly before continuing. And every morning. His voice lowered softer. I still reached across the bed expecting you there. The confession hit like a gunshot. Because she did the same thing. Every single morning. Elena stepped closer. So why didn't you come find me? Luca's eyes lifted slowly toward hers. Because you left. Simple answer. Painfully respectful answer. He could have tracked her easily. Probably did track her for a while. But he stopped. Because somewhere along the way, Luca finally learned the difference between protecting someone and possessing them. That realization alone made Elena love him harder. Dangerous. Still dangerous. She looked around the garage quietly. You really became a mechanic. I fix things now. That feels symbolic. It's cheaper than therapy. Elena laughed through tears finally. God, she missed this. Missed him. Missed breathing without fear around another human being. Luca studied her carefully again. Still searching for damage. Still making sure she survived whatever happened after leaving. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. You cut your hair. Elena touched the shorter dark waves absent-mindedly. You noticed immediately. I notice everything. That still sounds exhausting. It is. The rain outside intensified softly. Ocean wind rattled the garage windows. And suddenly neither of them wanted distance anymore. Not after 6 months. Not after almost losing everything. Luca stepped closer again. Close enough to feel her breathing. Close enough to remember exactly how she fit against him. Elena's pulse betrayed her instantly. He noticed. Of course he did. You're nervous? Luca murmured softly. You make eye contact aggressively. His mouth twitched faintly. There she is. She looked up at him carefully. No Mafia empire now. No violence surrounding them. No survival adrenaline confusing emotions. Just 2 damaged people standing in a tiny garage by the ocean. Real. Terrifyingly real. Elena's voice softened. So what are we now? Luca stared at her for several seconds. Then finally answered honestly. I have absolutely no idea. That made her smile fully for the first time since Blackridge. Beautiful smile, free smile. The kind nobody had managed to steal from her permanently after all. She stepped into him slowly until his hands settled naturally against her waist. Warm, safe. Home. Maybe. Elena whispered softly. We're just 2 people who survived each other. Luca looked at her like she just said something sacred. Then quietly. You know what's funny? What? You were the worst kidnapping mistake in history. Elena laughed softly. And you were the most emotionally unstable Mafia boss alive. Former Mafia boss. Still dramatic though. Fair. Rain thundered against the garage roof while Luca kissed her slowly. Not desperate this time. Not survival. Not grief. Just love. Messy. Damaged. Hard-earned love. The kind built from gunfire and trauma and impossible choices. And somehow, against every logical outcome, they survived it. Outside, the storm continued over the coastline. But inside the little garage near the sea, For the first time in both their lives, neither of them was running anymore.